Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. First item on the agenda is we're going to consider a proclamation recognizing National Library Week, which is April 3rd to the 9th. Bill, you want to talk a little bit about it?
This is something you've done the last few years at the request of our township library. As you know, we have one of the best libraries in the county, probably in the Commonwealth, that does a lot of great programs for our community. And this is National Library Week, April 3rd through the 9th. So you have a proclamation in front of you for your signature and approval tonight that would make Library Week in Horsham the same week, April 3rd through the 9th.
Okay, very good. And this will be presented to the library board?
Yes.
Good. Next item is announce our support for the Ukraine and for the economic sanctions by having divested Russian investments in Horsham Township's financial portfolio.
This is just announcing that with the economic sanctions, we have divested any Russian investments. Mainly they were with our pension funds. As you know, in our pension fund portfolio, we have international stocks, international investments. It was a very small percentage, 0.196% of our total portfolio was with the Russian investments, which amounted to just about $55,000. But we have taken that $55,000 and invested in other international stocks.
A little bit helps. Thank you, Bill. Questions or comments from the public? Anyone? Okay, next is approval of checks. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the list of checks and all funds in the amount of $372,955.19, and further move to authorize payment of the same.
Second.
Been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next is a zoning hearing board application. First one is Triple Net.
You have one this evening, Triple Net Investment, which is on County Line Road, and they are here to make their presentation. It's in our industrial zoning district, and it's a vacant property right now. There's nothing on it. It's between our property, the Strawbridge Park, and the shopping center, Haggerty Shopping Center with Grand Park Pizza in it. So it's the open field. They are looking to, they would like to put up two, I call them, describe them as warehouse distribution centers, two buildings on the property. If they are successful in getting their variances that they are looking for from the zoning hearing board, then they would move on to land development, which would be, of course, Planning Commission and you. And they are here to present their application.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Freemuth. I'm an attorney at Whistler Pearlstein. Represent the applicant for this application. I have Justin Giannotti, who's our project engineer, with me this evening, and Greg Rogerson's in the back there, a representative of the applicant. I don't know, Bill, if you want to bring up the plans.
Do you want to do the aerial exhibit?
Yeah. You know what? I'll also hand out hard copies as well in case you want to follow along. That's a pretty good size screen. So the applicant's the owner of approximately 30 acres of property that's located on County Line Road, which, as Bill mentioned, adjoins the Township Strawbridge Park to the north and the Horsham Air Guard Station and the Pico substation to the south. Property is located in the I-3 Industrial District. It's presently unimproved. You can see up on the screen now is an aerial exhibit plan. The property's highlighted in yellow. County Line Road is sort of denoted in the magenta, purple, pinkish color, which is also the boundary line between Horsham Township and Warrington Township. As you can see, the property's primarily open field with some wooded areas in the center there. There's also wooded areas along the boundary line with the park, and also towards the rear portion of the property. There's also a small portion of floodplain and wetlands located in the rear portion of the property. If you can go to the next plan, Bill. This is a utility easement aerial overlay plan. Again, you can see the existing condition of the property. However, as you look at this plan, you can see that the property is encumbered by 2 utility easements that serve the air base, which extend along the entire length of the southern property line there on the left-hand side of the property, at a combined width of 85 feet, with a total area of 4.24 acres. You'll hear in a moment that this easement is the primary reason for the variances that are being requested. On this plan, you can also see denoted in the orange along County Line Road, the ultimate right-of-way. And then you go to the next plan, Bill. This is the natural resources plan for the property. You can see on there the utility easements noted in the orangish color, the ultimate right-of-way also in that orange color, as well as woodlands, wetlands, floodplain areas, which are defined as natural resources under the zoning ordinance. We're showing you this plan because it does have an impact on the impervious coverage calculation, which is one of the items of relief that we're requesting. And then the next plan, Bill. So this is an overlay, aerial overlay of the proposed development. The applicant is intending to develop this property with 2 warehouse buildings containing a total of approximately 324,000 square feet, along with associated parking, loading, stormwater management, and related facilities. Again, you can see County Line Road sharing the boundary line between Horsham and Morrington. Property again outlined in yellow. You can see there's a parking area between the first building and County Line Road. The loading area is located between the 2 buildings, which is highlighted there for you on the screen. Then you have the second warehouse building. Behind that, you have an additional parking area. The proposed warehouse use is a permitted use in the I-3 industrial district. Again, looking back at the plan, you'll see there's 2 access drives to the site off of County Line Road. One is directly across or lines up with Titus Avenue. The other one is a little bit further south on County Line Road. If you go to the next plan, Bill. This is just a zoning plan rendering. It's essentially a more of a close-up than the prior plan that you just saw. It notes the same improvements that are being proposed. I would note, and I have a little bit of marker here, I'll show it to you. There is an access area shown on this plan up at the top here with the naval station. That access is shown in order to include it in the impervious coverage calculation in the event that it becomes necessary as part of any land development application in the future to make that connection. I just wanted to call that out to your attention. The variances that are being requested are listed on this plan. Down in the bottom right, there are 6 dimensional variances that are being requested. As I mentioned in the beginning, the variances are primarily a result of the utility easement along the southern boundary line, which requires the development to shift closer to the boundary line with Strawbridge Park so that we don't infringe upon that easement. Regarding the variances specifically, 2 variances relate to the required screen buffer along the northern boundary line with the park, which is zoned residential. We are providing the required 50-foot setback from the common boundary line with the park. In fact, the closest building is about 160 feet from the boundary line, but the applicant cannot provide the required screen buffer along that entire length of the boundary line because of the need to locate an above-ground stormwater management facility at the lowest point of the property, which is that right-hand side of the plan, the common boundary line with the park. As a result, there's no room for the screen buffer. You can see where the red line's pointing at light green area. You can't quite see it on this screen, but that is indicated as an area for an above-ground stormwater management basin. Notwithstanding, there are trees on the park property that will remain, and the park in this area is used primarily for farming, so we believe that a natural buffer will remain after construction. Variance is also being requested to permit a 75% disturbance of woodlands where 50% is permitted. As I mentioned, and as you saw on the natural resources plan, there are 2 areas of woodlands on the property that happen to be centrally located, which make it essentially impossible to develop the property without disturbing those woodland areas. I would note that those areas do not appear to be considered quality woodlands, and the applicant is not going to disturb any of the woodland areas to the rear of the property. And of course, the applicant will be subject to the township's landscape requirements as part of any future land development application. Variances also being requested in order to permit parking in the front yard, in the front of the building, which I showed you on the site plan there, along County Line Road. Locating the proposed parking in the front yard allows the applicant to turn the proposed warehouse building so that all the truck loading and unloading activities can be located between the 2 buildings and hidden from view from the street, which we believe is more in keeping with the surrounding area. A variance is also requested to allow 68.6% impervious coverage where 65 is permitted. Bill, if you can just go to the next sheet. This is a sheet that's, I won't go through all the numbers, but this is a sheet that's intended to just show you or demonstrate to you that but for the utility easements on the property, which again total 4.24 acres in area, the proposed development would comply with the impervious coverage requirements of the zoning ordinance. Notwithstanding the easement, the development's only 3.6% over what's permitted, and the applicant intends to install stormwater management facilities to control and manage all of the stormwater generated from this development. In fact, the applicant submitted a preliminary stormwater design to the township engineer, who reviewed that and issued a letter indicating that they believe we'll be able to comply with the township stormwater management requirements. And then finally, we recently amended the application to require one last dimensional variance to permit loading spaces with a width of 13 feet as opposed to the required 14 feet. Width of 13 feet is the industry standard and provides adequate room for loading activities, and in the end, we believe that 1 foot difference is de minimis and should not have any negative impact on the loading activities on the site.
What zoning section's that in?
The width requirement,
It's 230-35.A.
and I'm going to stop talking for a moment and turn it over to Justin, who's going to go through the 3D renderings that I think are the next sheet.
Thank you, Bill. So part of the initial discussions we had with staff on this project was just the perspective of what this building was going to what was going to look like from County Line Road. There was a lot of concern about the view shed with the buildings, with the size they are. So what we put together right now is a 3D rendering package showing a perspective of what this building is going to look like as you drive down County Line and then from an aerial view. So this first perspective of what you're looking at is the proposed, I'm going to call it the western intersection with Titus Ave. You'll notice that it's a signalized intersection now as part of this project. We are proposing to signalize that intersection, which is going to provide both a benefit to the project, but more importantly, a regional benefit for Titus Ave. I understand that's a concern of the township, so wanted to highlight that aspect of it. And as you see this intersection here, it's going to be heavily landscaped. The streetscape is going to be heavily buffered with street trees and additional plantings. And we're putting the parking in the front yard. We're outside the front yard setback, and we're going to be screening that buffer from the road as well. So you try to hide the visibility of the cars in the building as you drive along. If you page down, there's a few. Similar view from the opposite side. This is the lower driveway on the eastern side. This is, again, looking at the building as you head towards Titus Avenue. You'll see the building in the background. This is the front building, main drive coming in, and then you'll see the landscaping being proposed and the existing, some of the existing utility poles and street trees that are being proposed. This is a view from inside the industrial complex, looking down one of the parking aisles in the back. Again, you'll see, really this is just to show how the buildings are going to be, the architecture of the building, which we can get into in a minute, but just we're trying to make the buildings more aesthetically pleasing, and again, supplement with additional landscaping to try to blend in with the surroundings. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. You can see the Titus, Titus Ave. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking towards the Titus. This is a bird's eye view, again, looking to Titus Road intersection all the way at the top of the plan. And you'll see how that the front is being screened, and additional plantings, and all the plantings that you see on this plan are being proposed as part of this application. So, yeah, we're taking down a portion of wetlands that are woodlands in the middle of the site, but it's going to be heavily landscaped and supplemented, as you see here. Just another overhead shot. Andy alluded to that the driveway that you see, the turn going towards the back, that's going to the air base. That's not being proposed at that time, but it's being proposed as part of this application because we want to make sure that the impervious is being credited, and we're counting for the impervious should that be required in the future. There have been conversations with the base. That connection is not being proposed now, but want to leave that open for future connectivity. I will note that part of the plan here was to orient the building so that the truck courts that you see in the center are shielded from the road. From a warehouse perspective, the unattractive, quote-unquote, component of it is the docks. So by shielding them in the middle between the two buildings, we're able to completely enclose them in the site. And with the buffering on the outside of the property, they will be shielded from both the front view shed and from the sides. And again, this is just an overhead view, 3D rendered, but overhead view of what this development is going to look like. You'll see the signalized intersection with Titus, and then the westernmost driveway. This plan's oriented opposite of the perspective of north. But that is, in a nutshell, what's being proposed. And you'll see the landscaping along, and I apologize for the mislabel there. That's Strawbridge Park, not as labeled. But the existing landscaping along that park is going to remain. So we're not going to be able to add the landscape buffer as proposed by your ordinance with the amount of trees and spacings, but it's going to be a green bioinfiltration basin that's going to serve as a buffer. We're meeting the width requirements. It's just we're going to plan it, but not to the extent the ordinance requires along that one section.
Bill, do you have any thoughts before we ask questions?
Nope, I think you can start asking questions.
I guess we should go over these variances one at a time. I know we went through them real quick, but should we talk about it?
You can if you want to, and then,
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's go over each one at a time, just so we're clear what's going on with them.
Okay.
The first one again,
Yeah, sure. The first variance is from the provisions of 230-31A to not require a screen buffer along the entire length of the residential district boundary. This is a good slide, so thank you. So that's, in that area right now, your ordinance requires between non-complementary uses, so that this is a industrial, commercial property, and then you have a park next to you, so you're required to have a 50-foot buffer, plan it in accordance with your ordinance. So we're not proposing any building. The building's still about 160 feet in from that property line, but that area is not going to be able to be landscaped in accordance with your standards of X amount of trees per linear foot, but it is going to be green. It's going to be used for landscaping, and we're going to use the supplement of the existing buffer that's there to satisfy.
and there's a basin along there as well?
We're proposing to put a basin along there.
And Eric, you've looked at that?
Eric, how much of the landscaping is missing?
Well, that's funny. I was going to ask the exact same question.
Because,
So, obviously, you can't
they
provide-
show a fancy picture here. My guess is the buildings are large enough where there's no room to do the buffering. If the buildings were smaller and the stormwater management was moved in, there would be room to do the buffering. Is that true?
So, if I may, so the way that the site's graded, that is a natural low spot, so that area is a natural place for the basin to be. And aligning that road with the intersection of Titus is the main intent. So the PennDOT wants that intersection, signalizing that intersection, that is going to be the location of the driveway. So by aligning that and keeping that straight, that was also designed so when you have connectivity to potentially the air guard, the naval base, that is a natural, a well-designed, traffic-engineered route to come through the site. So that alignment was pretty much set with the intent that there could be a connection in the future, but at the very least, there's going to be a signalized intersection which needs to meet the requirements of PennDOT.
You know, to Bill's other question, let's say there's 100 trees required. Do you know how many you can provide? We get that you aren't providing the 50 feet, but...
That was the thing. So we are going to be planting as much as we can there. So there's going to be a basin, so we may be planting the backside of the berm. That is going to be heavily landscaped. The point of this variance is we're confident that we're not going to be able to meet every tree required. So
But you didn't answer the question. You said we're going to do a lot. He asked how much is missing. That's what I asked.
And that's something we're going to have to get into when we do a full landscaping design and the full stormwater design of how much we can plant there.
The trees that you're showing, are they on the Grand Park property?
They are on they split the line, so some of them are on our property, some are on the park property. And I will note that at the very least, we're going to need the ordinance because this throat length of this driveway is defined by PennDOT. So at least at this area, we're not going to be able to comply with that area, regardless of how much we plan and regardless of what that stormwater looks like there. So that variance will remain regardless with that intersection improvement. But I do, to your point, I understand. You want to know how many trees. That's something we can certainly look into.
And you also mentioned there was a row of trees on your first slide that go right through the building. They're coming out as well.
Correct. There's a row right now. It's just correct, right through the middle there. Meet your definition of woodlands. They're not specimen trees. They were surveyed and analyzed, but that is going to come out as part of this application. And again, we're showing that we're over disturbance with woodlands, but it's only because there's not a whole lot of woodlands on site. So your denominator, the equation's less. So I mean, you have less woodlands, the more you disturb, the higher your percentage. So again, we're preserving everything that's high quality near the wetlands in the back. Just the center of the site, which needs to be developed, is going to be over your threshold.
So you do feel that once you get done planning, that you will fulfill the requirements of the tree ordinance?
Correct, yeah. There's extensive plannings being proposed. I mean, this is not just for show. I mean, we are proposing to do a heavily landscaped site to try to buffer that view.
You don't anticipate requesting a waiver from the tree replacement requirement?
That's to be determined, but at this point, what we're proposing here, I'm confident that we have the area to meet it. Still to be addressed during land development, though.
The next variance?
The next one would be from the provisions of 230-35A to permit loading spaces 13 feet wide, where loading spaces 14 feet wide would otherwise be required. Industry standard for warehouses, tractor trailers are 8.5 foot wide. So the industry standard is between 12 and 13 is a loading dock. Docks are only 10 feet wide, the dock doors. So we don't need the 14-foot width. The 13 is the industry standard. So we're not asking for the length. We're still providing the full 65-foot length. We just need it from the width itself, a 1 foot reduction.
Right? You okay with that? Okay. What's the next one?
The next one on the list I think we covered is Section 230-49F3, which permits 50% disturbance of woodlands. We're proposing to disturb 75% of the woodlands. As Justin mentioned, that's primarily due to that
Right.
the strip there and in the center.
Deal with that at land development.
The next one would be 230-153.C to permit parking areas to be located in the front yard where parking areas would otherwise be required to be located in the rear side. Based on just the orientation of the site and that the warehouse use, we're proposing the parking be in the front yard. It's not in the front yard setback. The parking is actually placed in the right spot. We're not asking for relief for the placement, just the orientation of it being in front of the building. Again, we're putting the docks in the center of the building, and that's just to obscure and to buffer the truck and the heavy industrial use from the street, from the road, from County Line Road.
But this is to meet the requirements for parking.
Correct. Correct.
Would you agree to a condition that no truck parking be in front of the building?
Yes. The site's designed so that trucks can't navigate through that front parking lot.
The next variance is from Section 230-153E, which requires a buffer of at least 50 feet planted in accordance with Section 230-31A, which is the first variance request that we had. So by virtue of that, we need a variance from that section.
And the last ones that we already discussed, it's the impervious coverage variance. Notwithstanding everything that Andy went through in the beginning about the easements on site being encumbering the site to the point where we would be compliant if we didn't count the easements. The ordinance requires we count them, so we're at 68.6%, where 65 is permitted. So again, if we took those 4.5 acres off the site, that's just an underground easement for utilities and sanitary, we'd be under the requirement. And that's also pushing our development closer towards the park, which is the subject of the other variance.
Undeveloped property, so.
Correct.
Okay, so a couple of questions. The frontage, County Line Road, you talked about utility lines and stuff. Are you planning on widening the road at all there, or?
Still, we're working, that, as part of your County Line Road improvement project, there are improvements happening to County Line Road.
Right, that's what I'm getting at, is what do you plan on doing to?
Those improvements are being incorporated into our site plans. What we're doing is the addition of the signal, so there's going to be a signalized intersection there, and we're working with PennDOT to make sure there's no additional improvements, but to understand that the improvements being done to County Line Road are sufficient for this use. But again, that's PennDOT, and we are working with them.
Because as you know, I mean, I'm assuming that your truck traffic's going to be pretty heavy,
Correct.
and the truck traffic is,
Interrupt you there. Sure. Just how many truck trips per day, tractor trailer truck trips, do you think this is going to put on County Line and 611? How many per day?
We still have to do the traffic study to get into that, but and that will be part of the land development, and to go through the use and how many trucks are being generated from the site.
So we're going to give zoning relief without having a clue how much more traffic you're going to add to the roads.
It's going to be a condition, obviously, that we're going to comply with your traffic engineer and with PennDOT. But given the use and that it's zoned
You
industrial.
have to comply and do the studies. That's got nothing to do with the question.
Okay.
I have a question on that as well. I don't even see turning lanes in your guys' plans. That's already a pretty heavily trafficked area, just being semi-residential.
Turning lanes on County Line Road?
Yes.
I'm sure there's going to be decel lanes, and there's going to be turning lanes for that regard. That's all going to be a PennDOT during land development.
That's obviously going to be a pretty large increase in traffic in that area.
Yeah, we're going to do a traffic study to generate, see what's being generated.
is there any proposed, because of the truck traffic, is there any proposed I guess, improvements to the intersection of 611 and County Line Road to allow for this truck traffic to come in and out of that? That's a busy intersection, and there's a lot going on there.
611 in County Line? Well, again, that's.
But obviously, that's the way the trucks are going to go, right?
Yeah.
They're not going any other way.
That'll be part of the traffic study that we do, and we work with PennDOT to make sure there's no plan improvements required.
It's a tough nut to swallow because we just don't know. I mean, we know that there's going to be a lot of truck traffic just by looking at it. But without knowing what it is, it's hard to sit here and say, yay. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Another question was that you talked about the road that goes back to the Naval Air Station, the Air Guard Station. And you haven't gotten any word from them as whether they like that road going to the border, or have you talked to them at all? Have we gotten any information from them, Bill? I'll let you go first.
You can come back.
That's okay. Well, I can tell you that we've reached out on several occasions and haven't received a response to date. So I can assure you that the applicant will continue to reach out and cooperate, with them and keep the lines of communication open and do, whatever it is we need to do to make sure that they understand this plan and they know what's going on.
Because I'm sure they'd be very concerned about a road leading right up to their property.
Right, and like I said, we've reached out to them. There's been communications. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a response yet.
So, and you had mentioned that the road is proposed but not, well, it's designed but not proposed. I was a little unclear what you meant by, like, you're putting it on the plan just in case it goes through, but it may not go through, and therefore it may not happen.
Correct. So since we're here for zoning relief and we know that that's going to be additional impervious, we're going to design the site as if it's going in. Where the site can just be, we can just trim off that road at the top. It doesn't need to connect through, and that would just be open space at the top. But we want to make sure that whole road works if and when they come back and say they want to connect, or if down the road they'll leave the opportunities. I know they want a signalized intersection. They wanted the tightest road intersection. So we didn't want to design the site to preclude that from happening in the future.
Anybody else have any questions?
Just to let you know that the Air Guard, I did share this with the Air Guard, the vice commander of the Air Guard, so she has seen this plan with the driveway access. As they said, it would only be constructed if the Air Guard wants it to be constructed. At the time I shared it with her, she didn't seem too thrilled about it. So I don't know if they're going to want it, but they are aware of this plan. I will also, as you know, all property owners within 500 feet get notified of the zoning hearing board, so they'll get a letter from us, but in addition, I'll let them know about the zoning hearing board meeting, that the plan is going. She also said that it did meet their force protection standards. It does meet that, so that's my conversations with the base personnel.
Hard to get through to them.
It is hard to get an answer from them.
Yes. So do you have proposed tenants yet, or is this just going to be like, we're going to build it and see who comes?
Yeah, there's no tenants identified yet, but it will be, build it and then see who the tenants might be.
I know they built a pretty huge facility up on 309 in Hatfield, I guess. It doesn't look like that's being used too much. Is that not you guys, is it?
No.
Somebody else? Yeah, it looks like that's pretty empty still. So I'm just wondering where all this is coming from. And, we building something that may never happen, and then what?
It'll definitely happen. The way they work, the deals work so fast, it's pretty much, when you build it, they will come. Like, they sort of wait until these deals are in the process, because they don't have time to wait. So you need to get this under approvals, and then they'll start eyeing up for tenants. But the market is very strong. They'll be full.
How do you do traffic studies if you don't know the occupant? Like a refrigerator supply company, Vice, an Amazon company, the traffic is going to be substantially different between the two. So how do you guys develop that plan?
Sure. Now, great question. So the IT manual, which is the Institute of Traffic Engineering, puts out things for, in this case, it'll be warehouse fulfillment center, warehouse distribution. Amazon would be a fulfillment center, which would be a different traffic generator. We're here tonight for warehouse distribution, which sets the standard for X amount of trips per square footage and X amount of employees. So that whole calculation can be done for just a general tenant, and if it doesn't meet the criteria for being a warehouse distribution center, we would have to come back, and the parking would be different. Everything would be different. It would be a different application.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So I'm just hesitant. I see believe it that there's a use for this. There's people out there that want to see this. What I struggle with, I guess, is just the idea of the truck generating traffic that it's going to bring. It's going to be tremendous, I think, not only on 611, but also, I guess, County Line going up to 309 and coming down from 309 maybe. We've got it bad enough here as it is on 611. It's, and you had I don't know, in your picture, I didn't count the number of trucks you had there, but,
Yeah.
but if you look at the number of bays and then you did the math, you can assume there's going to be a significant amount of trucks. So, my hesitation is just, what we don't know yet.
So just for point of clarification, the amount of docks on the building, it's not a direct correlation to the amount of trucks. So they like versatility. So some trucks don't like backing in next to other trucks, so that they give the option, depending on where they go in the warehouse. It just gives more versatility to that. That's why we show as many docks as we can. So obviously, there's always the possibility they could all be filled, but it's very unlikely. Just from experience looking at warehouses of this size, it looks daunting, but you're probably only in the range of about 7 to 10 trucks per peak hour added to the roadway, which is not that big on a county line road perspective. It's not as big as you think, just based on these, because they do come in, they do unload, and it's not just a constant stream. When we start getting into different uses, it's more trucks. But from a fulfillment center standpoint, about 300,000 square feet, you're probably in the range of about 7 to 10 trucks per AM and PM peak hour. So during the off-peak hours, you're going to be significantly less trucks.
But can the use change over time?
Change from a
Use standpoint? Like you just said, if it goes to fulfillment, then you're talking about a different number.
correct, and
And that, like, how are we zoned for that, Bill? Is that?
It's both uses are
Both
allowed in
uses,
the
right?
zoning district.
So over time, it could change where the number of trucks could double or triple, depending on, what's needed there, right?
sure, and we would need to adjust our traffic study and come before you again with that change of use.
And I think the plan would change. If
Well,
the
I'm
use were
talking
to
about-
change, so the parking would change and we'd have to come back, because it wouldn't be that plan any longer.
I'm talking about after it's built, and everything's set and it's done, and you have tenants there, and then the economy changes a bit, and then next thing you know, somebody wants to change it to a larger capacity, and then you have more trucks. That's a possibility, right?
Well,
Is it?
yeah, one thing I would note is that these buildings are often self-regulated by parking. So changing that intensity of the use would often require more parking, more employees, which we don't provide, and obviously we're maxed out on impervious. So we would have to come before you for additional parking, which there isn't really locations for additional parking on this plan as it's being built. So in a way, it's self-regulating, and they said that we would have to be back before you if and when that does happen.
Yeah, I would imagine if the use changed and we couldn't provide enough loading and parking, then we would need a variance under that situation, so we'd be back in with a new application. And that would probably get flagged during your certificate of occupancy process, when
Yeah, I
it change a
mean,
tenant.
The variances you're requesting are not, I don't think they're crazy. It's not something that I'm afraid of. It's just the unknown, what might happen there in the future, and what the impact's going to be on, our roads that, people that live here that are going to deal with it. They're already dealing with enough traffic, so that's my biggest concern, so. That's where I'm at. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in.
Yeah, I just have one more question. Do the trucks go out the light intersection or the non-light intersection? Because just looking at the mouths of the intersections within the property, it looks like they're all going out on the non-light side. Is that incorrect?
But I'll put it this way, they're designed so that trucks can go out either side. Trucks are going to, since we're putting the signal in, trucks are going to elect to go through the signalized intersection if they're making a left out to go on County Line Road. If they're making a right out on County Line Road, they might do the unsignalized intersection just to keep the flow of traffic moving. But the whole thing is designed to try to force trucks to the signalized intersection. That's part of that improvement. That's the reasoning behind doing that.
Okay, thanks.
How long would it take you to do a traffic study?
Traffic study, we could probably prepare within the next month or so.
A month?
To get it together, and then that would be working with PennDOT too, so we do have PennDOT scoping meeting, come back with comments, and then the scope of the traffic study would be delineated.
But you could have a completed traffic study within a month? Or just-
Depending PennDOT, yeah, we could have a traffic study, whether it meets PennDOT's criteria, it depends on their responsiveness.
What's the next step after this?
For them?
For them, if after tonight, what's the next step for them to push it forward?
To go to
Which would
zoning
be
hearing
when?
board, the second Tuesday of April.
So would you be willing to kick the can down the road till you got your traffic study done?
Trip generation analysis, we would do without traffic study.
Kick the trucks down the
Yeah, I mean,
road?
that's without a traffic study. Could we do there's a trip generation comparison, which basically takes the use, how many trucks are being proposed, and then factors it in without doing the full. We may be able to get it done by the 14th, but I'm given the option of possibly having how many trips are being proposed in this use and how it fits with the surrounding use. So I'm just making sure that we can meet the 14th.
Eric, that's a question for
What
you.
he's proposing, how does that compare to a traffic study?
Well, a traffic study would be looking at delays at the intersections, 611 and County Line Road.
Kind of an important topic.
What he's talking about is just how many trucks in the AM and PM peaks would be coming out and going, and also throughout the course of the day. So that's just a trip generation study. That doesn't necessarily tell you whether the intersection is going to go from a level of service C to a level of service F, and what they would need to do to remediate that. So this is like an abbreviated traffic study.
Is it currently a C? Or you don't know?
Probably not, but.
I don't think so
yeah.
either. That's,
That was an example, but yeah, I don't know off the top of my head what it is.
So if you had to do if we wanted you to do the traffic study first and you agreed to do that, how would that affect the zoning, the zoning? That would push it to when? May? They meet in May?
Possibly May. I'm not an engineer, but I know that's a tight schedule, I
That's pretty
think.
tight. We
You
have
don't
to do
control
weekends.
PennDOT?
Yeah, we also have to get it on the weekend, and that's pretty tight.
I would say, I would say the safe would be the June zoning hearing board, and then that would give them time to not rush and complete the study as required and meet with PennDOT folks and do all that you do for an engineering study and then come back to you like the fourth Monday of May?
I mean, from our perspective, that would
Something like
be
that.
a lot easier for us to swallow this than be able to see all the information versus, it might delay you a little bit, but does that couple months matter?
I'm sure.
I don't think it matters as much as the opposition by the township would matter.
Yeah.
So everything's relative. I'm sure they'd like to go to the zoning hearing board in April, but I'm pretty sure they also don't want to go with you.
Just for the record, I want to see the traffic study before I can agree to this. But I'd also like to see the required buffering since we're next to a park. So I'm only 1 out of 4, but I want to make that clear.
I think I made myself clear. I'd really like to see that traffic study done, just to take all this in before, hate to make those decisions of opposing, not opposing, without seeing all the information. I hate to delay it for you, but, from our perspective, we have to really see what's going to be best. And without seeing that study, it's going to be difficult to make that determination. So if we had to make a determination tonight, I'd have to be like, well, I guess
No, I mean, I think the only way to say is that obviously we would do the traffic study with PennDOT, and any improvements that are required for this application, we would be agreeable to doing with some discussion, making sure it works, but we're not opposed to doing it. I'm just saying that that's obviously land development that we would get into, and we were agreeable to any improvements required that came out of that.
And
Yeah.
this isn't council's first
No.
rodeo, so they're well aware of the fact that their leverage at land development is 1/4 of what it is when you're going to the zoning hearing board. So they know that the things that are really important to them have to be addressed now, because after that, it'll be, well, PennDOT says we can do this, and your ordinance only requires that. And that's what you do, that's your job. But they also know that now is the time if they want something that they think is really important for the community, that they ask for it.
Understood.
And, I've heard a number of things that you guys have addressed, but I didn't hear from Sean or, sorry, I'll be quiet.
I'm on the same page. It's a very unique position, and the effects not only on County Line, but also on 611, especially that left turn going on to 611. That could be backing people up maybe 3 changes of the light, 4 changes of the light, and not even considering the traffic that's going to be created on County Line Road in that general vicinity. So I would feel much more comfortable making a decision with the traffic study, and I wouldn't feel very comfortable, especially since there's nothing on that location right now. Even though you guys, that's a great presentation, I appreciate you guys walking us through this, but just it's a little incomplete at this time to make a determination.
I too am worried about the traffic study, not just 611, but going down County Line Road towards 309. That's almost all residential, 2-lane highway for the most part. I can't imagine being behind one of those trucks for that entire ride. So I worry about the other direction also. And it's a very residential area in general, unlike the area that Mark noted on 309 isn't really residential at all. So I just don't know how that would work. So that's really important also. I agree on the traffic study.
So, it looks like you're getting 4 people not real happy about, pushing this thing forward to the zoning hearing board. But if you're willing to do that traffic study and come back with that, I think you're probably in a better position.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to have to do the study and come back to you as quick as we can.
And we appreciate that, we really do. It means a lot.
So that we're not being disingenuous, there are other things that, when I make notes, and I'm not sure which way council's going, that I wrote down that I think I'm pretty sure they're going to want as conditions. So it's not just a matter of doing the traffic study and
Understood.
the no trucks in the front parking lot. They want to see more detail in the traffic signal at Titus, that whatever you put in here has to be consistent with your presentation materials. Mr. Whiteside brought up the need for buffering along the north side,
North side. Park side.
park side of the property. So there used to be a time when council would automatically oppose any zoning hearing board application when a project that's big without a fully engineered plan. So I think you're going to have to do some work to figure out exactly what kind of buffering you're going to be able to fit in with that stormwater system. Compliance with the tree replacement requirements, and I know it's easy to say to the extent we can, and we can deal with that at land development, but I think if you're taking down trees and with a use like this, they're going to want to see every tree replaced. Dedication of the right-of-way, and they haven't even talked about sidewalks, but that's probably something they're going to be looking for.
I think sidewalks
And
would be
then
fine.
finally, what, did I miss something?
I have mine,
I have,
but I have a
okay,
couple that are normal. I just don't want them to be caught off guard when they come
I don't
back.
either. I don't want to be disingenuous, but I think that it's at some point when you figure out, if you're going with a certain ITE classification, like fulfillment center versus what was the other one?
Warehouse distribution.
Warehouse distribution, if you change the ITE use, it will require further zoning hearing board approval. Because our zoning ordinance doesn't distinguish with such a fine line between a fulfillment center and a distribution center. But it's going to have an impact on the community.
Bill, you had additional comments?
Mary mentioned the sidewalks, but also along with the sidewalks, which are part of your saldo anyway, for land development, but the street lamps along. Mr. Whiteside's talked about the buffering on the park side, and they show a lot of trees out front, but that would be, I think, a condition too, that the streetscaping along County Line Road to buffer the building, whether it's a berm plus the trees, something like that. And the facade of the building, we saw some renderings, but I think we just want things to look good in Horsham. Your photos look good, but, I don't know what type of material that is. We see these centers primarily up near the Lansdale interchange, Tower Minson, Hatfield, Franconia, up on the northeast extension, the turnpike going out towards Hershey. Some of them don't look too pretty. So we saw the one that just went up on 309 in Hatfield. So we just want things to look nice in Horsham, and mainly I think it's the front facade of the facing County Line Road. It's not all four sides of both buildings, but what people can see from the road, so facade. And then if you do have any signage, whether it's on the building or a ground sign, and I don't know why this type of use would have an electronic message board. We call them LED signs, that I don't know if that's something that council would want here on this site. A ground sign that you light internally or from the outside, that's different. I'm talking about one of those like electronic message boards. So that might also be a condition, and I think that's all I have.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that I
Did
think
you
the
need any
applicant
more?
wants this to look very nice for Horsham as well, so, and we're willing to work with the township on facades and another item, so we'll do our best to see if we can get some detail for you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
that.
you.
Guys
Yep.
did a good job.
Thank you.
Here. Okay, next is a co-applicant agreement for a highway occupancy permit for Triumph Property Management.
So this is a land development application that you have given final approval it's the dentist office next to Hollowell Elementary School. So the next two agenda items, which you normally see with development constructed on, in front of state highways, both of them have to deal with them connecting into the storm sewer system of PennDOT on 611. And this is the co-applicant agreement that says that they will maintain their pipes and their storm, and they posted their escrow check. We have received the signed copy of their agreement with the escrow check. So both items are ready for your consideration this evening.
Okay, we have two motions.
Move to authorize the co-application agreement for the highway occupancy permit for stormwater facilities as part of the Triumph Property Management LLC, 890 Easton Road, 19-06-D Land Development Plan.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next motion?
Move to adopt the resolution as proposed, authorizing the application for a highway occupancy permit for stormwater facilities as part of the Triumph Property Management LLC, 890 Easton Road, 19-06-D Land Development Plan.
Second.
Moved in second, this one is a roll call vote.
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Wade, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote? And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, next is considering an easement between the U.S. Navy and the township for a traffic signal at the main gate.
This has to do with the Hankin property, that they have received final approval, final land development approval for their residential section of the property. Along with that, the existing traffic signal at the former main gate is to be replaced as part of that land development. But as we know, years ago, that signal has been in there for decades. It was never put in with any easement approval from the United States. So the United States is seeking an easement this time. They are working with us and the developer, and this is, the traffic signal will be owned by us. So this is an easement between the United States and Horsham Township.
Okay, any questions? If not, do we have a motion?
Move to adopt the easement agreement as proposed, authorizing an easement between the United States of America, U.S. Navy, and Horsham Township for replacing the traffic signal on Easton Road and the former Willow Grove Naval Air Station main gate.
Second.
Been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mr. President, can we go back to zoning hearing board applications? And Andy or Justin, if you can hear me out there in the hallway?
Your mic's not on, Mary. Your mic's not on.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
We didn't tie up that loose end. You didn't make a motion to send me in opposition unless an extension was received.
We changed our mind now. So we need what do we need?
Motion to send the solicitor in opposition to the Haggerty application unless there is a continuance until June.
The motion that Mary said.
Second.
All right, it's been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, now you're good.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a technicality.
The
I
form's
think
on,
Bob Iannuzzi will.
there's a form on the website, if you look at our website, or I'll make sure myself or Mike Shinton emails it to you tomorrow.
All right, now we're going to review the Hatboro Horsham School District's new building, Meeting House Road.
Yes, sir. As council knows, the Keith Valley Middle School, they have received the variances that they need from the zoning hearing board for the school. They've also, at this point, received preliminary approval from the Township Planning Commission, and they are in front of you this evening for preliminary land development review. I'll just ask each one of you, when you speak, to pull the mic close to you in front of you. Anyone at the table? Is that one on?
No? There we
There
go.
you
Just
go.
got to get really close to that one. Sorry.
Okay. Good evening, lady and gentlemen of Horsham Council. It's good to be with you. My name is Jamie Lynch. I'm with Dewey Engineering,
and I'm proud to be the project manager for the School District of Hatboro Horsham as they proceed with the construction of a new Keith Valley Middle School. When last our heroes met, we were before you prior to going to the zoning hearing board and provided you with some beginning information on the planning of the Keith Valley Middle School. We've since been to zoning. We've been to the Planning Commission. We've worked very intently with our team and also with the township team. So tonight we're before you asking for your preliminary approval of the new Keith Valley plan. And what we'd like to do is give you really a stem to stern update on everything that we've been doing, where the building has proceeded, and then to go through some of the details and the waivers requested. And I see Bill wants to
Just before you
interject.
get started, we do have 2 new council people that started in January, so could your team introduce themselves for their benefit?
Absolutely. We
Thank
can go right down the table here, if that makes sense, and there'll be a quiz at the end, I guess.
Sure. Hi, I'm John Kircher. I'm the principal at Keith Valley.
We do morning announcements.
Good evening. Scott Everslug, Superintendent of Schools. David Schrader with the Schrader Group will be talking about the architecture.
Charity Group, Terraform Engineering, we're doing the site plans.
Anton Kuhner from McMahon Associates with the traffic.
That's our team, and just as council has changed over, the district's leadership has changed over since we last saw you at the construction of Hallowell Elementary, and I'm sure you're familiar with Hallowell, and then the follow-up project was Crooked Billet. Both were very successful projects for the school district, on time and on budget. Most notably, Crooked Billet recently was done on time and under budget during the pandemic. So really what I've always said is that this is a very intentional team, both in the educational program they put together and the way they manage projects. And we would expect nothing but the same and probably even a higher level of quality as we move ahead for Keith Valley. With that, I mentioned that we're seeking your preliminary approval this evening. We have a resubmission to make to go back to the Planning Commission. That would be in May. And then we would see you again, hopefully for final approval, final conditional approval at the end of May. And so tonight we'll tell you about the educational program, more about the detailed design, the logistics of the land development process, some of the issues that we've had, and we'll also present some of the information that we have updated since we were with planning that'll be included in our new submission back to the township that you'll see as a part of the final process. We have some videos to share, so we've put a good machine up there to take a look at how the building looks, not only outside but inside, not only during the day but also at night. So we've got a really comprehensive presentation for you, and we're going to start with Dr. Everslage, who's going to speak a little bit to the overall history of the Keith Valley project.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch, and thank you, members of council, for having us here to share with you what we think is a very exciting opportunity, both for the students of Hatboro Horsham and for the community itself. Education has always been valued here in the community. The school system has been a source of pride. We take a lot of pride in the services we provide, in the experience we provide for students, and this is part of that larger plan. I had the pleasure of joining the district in July of 2020, and so while it was not a great time pandemic-wise to join the school district, from a development standpoint, I'm very fortunate to have walked into the district and very early on in my tenure received a history of Keith Valley, the commitment to the replacement or renovation of the Keith Valley Middle School, and a history lesson, and became very early on appreciative of the history of the school board, the previous school boards, the previous administration, not only for their financial planning, but their facilities planning for the district as a whole. And the planning for Keith Valley has gone back to 2008. Well, there was some formal action taken by the district to pursue feasibility study for the modernization of the Keith Valley Middle School. In that study, there were significant concerns, upgrades that were required as far as aging boilers and inefficient lighting and unit ventilators and so forth, even then in 2008. So there was a definite need that emerged even that far back. However, there was optimism of the Horsham Land Redevelopment Authority was, of course, being engaged in looking at the possibilities for the air base, and the district is fortunate to have the school as one of the aspects of that redevelopment plan, and there was excitement in the district for the possibility of a new middle school, perhaps being one of the key parts of that redevelopment plan. We don't need to go into the details of why there was some delay of that, but that certainly was part of the township history and the school district history, because it forced the school district to reassess what some of the facilities needs were in the district. Other buildings that had needs were addressed and kind of reprioritized. The building of Hallowell Elementary was a tremendously successful project, beautiful building, and again, a source of pride for the district. That became prioritized. And upon the completion of Hallowell, the district also was assessing what would be next. With the delays of the base still in effect, they moved on to the Crooked Billet project, and that too was a success. And so while there's been these ongoing kind of questions about what to do next with Keith Valley, here we were in 2020, completed the Crooked Billet project, knowing that the needs for the Keith Valley were not only significant in 2008, but just increasingly so since then. The building really is in a state of at its useful end, and where renovations would not be cost efficient for the district for that site, and with some site limitations both on the location and around the district, we began really actively looking at what the replacement of Keith Valley could look like on the current Keith Valley site, knowing that we would be having to educate students during the construction of a project while developing a new Keith Valley Middle School on the site that we would be proud of and proud for the community. This is an image that you're familiar with. You can see it's dated 2012, and I think I look at this, and when I first saw this, I was beaming with pride. So I imagine what the township must have been feeling. Knowing that in your redevelopment plans for the base, you have a school right in light blue, right in the center of those plans. And to me, that speaks to the value that this community has placed on education, and knowing that a good school system is at the fabric of a good community, good, strong community, which we are. And so while this realization hasn't yet happened, I'm optimistic that one day will, and there'll be a great benefit to the community. And in the meantime, we have the challenge of saying, what now with our school? So we've looked to kind of reshift our focus to our current site and current location for Keith Valley Middle School to meet that need. One thing that I'm proud of that I was able to inherit is that the school team prior to my arrival was looking at the site of Keith Valley and the planning for Keith Valley from a lens of learning. It wasn't just about creating a new building. It wasn't just about taking what you once had and recreating that. The questions that were asked were, how do students learn best? What does a middle school learner experience look like? Yes, students can learn in a lot of different venues and a lot of different environments, but there are certain learning environments where learning can really be fostered, where it really can grow. And what you'll see in our plans here this evening is something we're very proud of, because we are thinking about what the middle school learner would experience through their time in school. And so what you won't see is a lot of different spaces that look alike. The kind of old model of schools would be you have several different classrooms, they look alike, and one year it could be a math room, the next year it could be an English room, and kids are always learning in that same environment. And what you'll see in our design is that students and teachers have a lot of flexible opportunities to say, how are students going to learn, and how are they going to collaboratively learn? And then we have several spaces where they could learn that based on what day of the week it is, what the lesson is. There are flexible spaces for students for us to combine classes very easily. There are several presentation spaces. There are hands-on learning studios where I could be a math teacher in one room one day and the next room in another day. It's a new way of thinking for our teachers. We've been doing a lot of programming and professional development with our teachers of what this could be, all with the end in mind to say we're going to provide a environment where students can really learn in a lot of different, thrive in a lot of different learning environments. So you're going to see collaborative spaces, you're going to see a lot of open spaces, you're going to see a lot of flexibility where students really can have accessibility and access to the highest level of learning possible. So we're really proud of the project we're going to show you today. And I'm going to turn it over to our architect, Mr. Schrader, who's going to talk through a little bit about the design.
Okay, thank you. So it's not often that we get to walk into a district that's prepared the way these guys have from an educational standpoint. So the second part of 2020, they had engaged a series of consultants who worked with them on their educational plan, coming up with some of those bullet points that you saw from Dr. Ebeslage on the screen. We took that at the beginning of 2021 and began the process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about process and then talk about the design itself. So the first part of this is you're seeing kind of a hop, skipping, and jumping across the United States here, but the kind of educational program that the district was looking to engage in was matched by a lot of these facilities that are from colleagues that I have across the United States, but also in the Mid-Atlantic area. And so we basically started with a virtual tour, and to match what Dr. Ebeslage was talking about, the spaces that you're seeing here, which include spaces like, and you'll hear this term, learning stairs, small group and large group learning spaces, a certain level of transparency between different types of learning spaces, multi-use of spaces for both presentation as well as just teaming and so on. So these are the kinds of spaces that you're starting to see in the buildings that are coming out, particularly middle school and secondary buildings. So this is the kind of vocabulary that we started to establish with the group. We went through a series of processes starting kind of in February and March, because we had gone through a programming effort to develop the number of and types of spaces that matched their educational goals. Had a whole series of programming sessions with the educators, also went on school tours. And so this happens to be a project down in Frederick County, Virginia. You'll see this kind of project emerging all up and down the East Coast. But it also includes those same kinds of spaces that we talked about. So the idea of the library actually kind of gets opened up a little bit and it becomes more of the resource space in the center of the building. You see quite a bit of, and we call them more learning studios now because they are classrooms, but they're connected to the teaming spaces like these. So the kids ultimately can be taught in one place and do their projects in another place, and then do small group activities in other areas. So that was one of the buildings of several that we toured. Then got back together in planning and design workshops, and we did these at the beginning of April in 2021. And it was everything from beginning the site planning process to actually getting into the organization of spaces within the facility once you located it on the site. So a very careful effort to move forward with how you established the site and then ultimately how you got into the building design once it was located on that site. And ultimately, from May through July, we were developing these concepts, and I can't remember quite the number, but I feel like it was 9 different site concepts, if I remember correctly, all trying to locate all of those elements on the site, while still operating the existing middle schools so that you built, you moved the kids, and then you took the old building down. And so the pieces of the puzzle, as we all saw it, were all of the circulation routes on and off the site, the ability to be able to build a new facility, move the kids in, and then take the old one down, and then ultimately the development after that's down of all of the playing fields. And so that was kind of the natural equation that led to what you see here. This project, as it stands here, was ultimately presented to the Facilities Committee of the district in September, and we kind of move forth from there. So what you're seeing is a 3-story academic structure at the backside. You're seeing, we call them the community spaces, but that is the auditorium, the gymnasium structures, and then the swimming area. And the intent there, and by the way, I guess I failed to note that this is Meeting House Road down here and Upland Avenue running along this direction, Milton behind, and Arundel down the side here. And I'm going to switch this and flip the site plan over in a second, so keep yourself oriented for one moment. Another part of the equation was this, which is the district administrative facility. There are a series of interesting hop, skipping, and jumping that creates, not only including where do you move the administration, but how do you move the technology that currently runs through that administrative center, the district's computer systems ultimately. So then we started to develop the building, and I'm going to share more of this with you shortly, but some of the elements that you're seeing in the renderings here match some of those elements that you saw earlier in some of those plans. So getting into this from a site plan perspective, north actually runs basically from the bottom diagonal north this direction. So the site is rotated about 45 degrees in this case. But there's Meeting House Road. The one plan element that I noticed here that I'll take full responsibility for is we apparently labeled this Olive Ave. That is Arundel Ave. That's Olive Avenue right there. This is, to give you a sense, the footprint of the proposed building. You can see all of the parking elements and all of the bus circulation routes and so on that sit on the current site. And you're all aware of the track and the football field over here. 1, 2, 3 access points along Meeting House Road, one along Upland from this direction, and that kind of gives you a sense of the existing. So we've got to work around this, and we have to build something new somewhere on the site to accommodate the students moving. And this ultimately is the engineered plan that you have in front of you. I'm going to be a little bit less engineering about it, and perhaps you'll hear from Terry and Jamie to help support some of this. But the real goal, once we got into all of this, that came out of that moving of the students here before we could take this down, was also setting up what we always try to do, which is separate parent drop-off loops and separate bus drop-off loops, so that those two paths don't cross on the site. Another thing that we try very hard to do is to establish good length queuing lines of the parent drop-off, so that we try to pull them off of any of the major roads that they're around, and in this case, that's Meeting House Road. So the goal is to try to provide that drop-off, plus any type of visitor parking that might come in a front entry from that point. So now we've got the buses taken care of, we've got the cars taken care of for the parent drop-off, which is, as all of you know, is a pretty major component on school sites today. And then there's the staff parking. And so there's a parking area down in this corner of the site that accommodates about 204 cars, and it does two things. It allows for staff to park in the morning, and it also allows for the district administration to park as well as any visitors that may come to district administration. The building is set up so that it has a main entry with the secure entry that you're all used to going through in schools today, and then it has the district administrative complex here that replaces the building that was there. So we had to set up also a circulation route into the building to accommodate that. And then lastly, there's a large transit zone in the building right here for the volume of students that come off the buses. And it's interesting because they come in at the second level. Grade drops like this. It allows us to build 3 stories back here. And this area that comes in effectively on the second floor of the plan allows the students to all filter across right into the middle of the building, going only up or down 1 story within the facility. So that's kind of the intent of the building as well. Ultimately, when this building is down, that allows us to have 4 full playing fields that don't cross each other, and there is an opportunity for a 5th one in the outfield of the baseball area. And then the track with a rubberized surface and then a grass field in the middle, and the tennis courts that go back to replace what we don't have on the site here. So that's ultimately the site plan. The building plan is a little complicated in these images, but you can start to make out at the lower level an auditorium that allows us to tuck the height of that down into the hillside here. The main office area with the district administration above the building's main office. And each of these represents what Dr. Eveslage was talking about, which is a series of classrooms around a teaming space, and then the small group spaces to support those in between. So it's 4 clusters, 3 stories tall, accommodating all of the students, with the dining space in the center, and similar to that image that I shared with you earlier, the media center, learning resource / library space. And then this just shows you going up through the second and then ultimately the third floor. So we said last time that a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is probably worth 1,000 pictures, and so this gives you a sense, coming down onto the site, you can see the 3-story structure of the academic houses on the outside. That's the parent drop-off at the front, and then you're going to see where the service area for the building is tucked back in between the 2 wings so that any vehicles that end up back there are shielded by the 2 building wings. This will show you the bus access point and drop-off, and the large parking area here that accommodates probably weekend or evening sports fields activities. We'll come back around here and ultimately into the parent drop-off loop as if we were driving from Meeting House into the site and dropping our student off. So this is a view coming straight down the parent drop-off, and you can kind of see the building is sitting in the hillside here. The right-hand side is the track, and you're coming towards the main entry. Up on the left-hand side are the gymnasium area and the pool area and the auditorium tucked into the hill, but that's the level that the students come in at from the bus drop-off. So bus drop-off students coming that direction, parent drop-off kids coming by the main office and being allowed into the main office area. We have, I think it's a series of 7 videos walking all around the building. I think I'll do one more thing. The building is going to be built of a brick base for the durability, and then the upper areas are a cement fiber siding product. The intent is just to try to quiet these areas down, not be quite as heavy as a brick structure all the way up. And then there is some glass around the stairwells, but all of the classrooms face into these 2 courtyards. They're not actually looking out on neighbors. They're looking into the courtyards here. That is that center spine that comes through, and it does have a stairway that goes up and down 1 story. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the fire access lane here, which has actually been developed a little bit since the rendering, so you'll hear a little bit more about that. This is an older video, and so that shows something that we actually took away. There's just a little patio out there now for the art and tech ed students to place paintings or sculptures or things like that. You're coming around the service area. This is the end of the classroom wing. There's going to be a storage facility right here for the district, and then that is the pool. So that's the first of the, and again, we deem them the community spaces for the building. So on this side of the building is meant to be the evening activities, any weekend use of the gym and pool. And so all of that activity is going on this side and not happening on the back side of the site. That is the bus drop-off. And that's the bus drop-off entry right there. Sorry, it's a little darker on the big screen here. It's a little darker on that one, too. And then there's the auditorium and performing arts area. I think I'll close with one of the videos of the 6 or so that we have inside. You don't want to go through all 6, I'm pretty sure. So there's the secure entry. That second floor right there is district administration. The ground floor is where the main office is. I'm going to skip this one, but that's a community room at the front of the building. And I'm instead going to start in the auditorium, which is meant as a multi-use space. So now you've gone past the secure entry. And on the left-hand side is the auditorium, which a folding wall can close across and make it a kind of a small, condensed 450 student theater, which is an appropriate size for the kinds of performances they're trying to do. Or it can be opened up with these learning stairs at the back for the entire student body to sit and view one activity here. So it's actually organized to do both. And one more just to help you understand the center of the building. These are those learning stairs that we saw, and essentially they serve kind of as a community function in the building. They're also kind of an access point from the ground floor that you're coming in at here to the second floor, those are the dining commons areas there, and just beyond the dining commons is the library area. But each of these are the three-story classroom structures that connect into this learning resource area at the center of the building. As Dr. Eveslage said, there is a series of classrooms, large group spaces, and then small group spaces, just like the one over your head right here or the one right there. So kids can gather in any number of types of spaces to do projects, meet with students, meet with faculty, and do a lot of the project-based work that is done today. And I think I'm going to stop at this, and we're happy to show you more videos as you see interest, but I'm going to hand it to Jamie, and we can always come back to those.
Let me borrow your mic, Dave. We'll shove these around as we need to. Thanks very much. I think one of the points that I wanted to make is that what you see in these images in the educational program that the district has developed for middle school, it is the only middle school in the district. That's to be understood. But the program comes out of what we learned and what the district developed at Hollowell and Crooked Billet. It's a natural progression to the house structure of what you see in the middle school. Kids that go to Hollowell, kids that go to Crooked Billet, leaving those buildings and coming to this one, and to the program that's being developed and the flexibility of the program was part and parcel to how those two elementary schools were created. So it really provides continuity to the entire educational program that the district has been trying to develop. So we've done a tremendous amount of work as we move toward land development with preparing for the land development process and ultimately to be in front of you this evening. There's been a great deal of site study, design, community involvement, educator involvement, staff, and parent involvement in this process the way it ought to be. And so we began by updating the District Facilities Committee and also the board at numerous times in 2021. We've been holding bi-weekly design meetings with the entire project team and with the end users so that we're detailing this building right down to the to the pulls on the doors of the wardrobes and how they're keyed and the flooring materials, et cetera. Continuously having community contact both directly with the neighbors in the community and also through the process of the land development presentation so that we can make changes as we proceed with design. A lot of site work as far as topographic and boundary survey and geotechnical work, the approval of the township coordination, hazardous materials investigation on the existing building. There are hazards there that will have to be abated as part of the project prior to demo. Updating facilities and the board continuously, additional site geotechnical information, not only for identifying sources of water, qualifying the soils, but also identifying where there's rock so that our design team can properly site the building and not incur too much cost in construction related to how soils are handled. Water and sewer adequacy letters, traffic analysis, that came out of the initial land development process. We have done a traffic study, and that's what Anton is ready to discuss tonight and include details in our resubmission for the next step in the process. And then we've done a lot of work on really identifying the details of the site, be it landscaping, being what the building looks like at night, how we respond to all of the comments and commentary that have come out of this process. And all the while maintaining the requirements of the Department of Education and their Act 34 requirements. And so all of that paperwork has been completed, and the building is compliant from the Department of Education standpoint. So some of the results as a part of this process. We've adjusted the building floor plan, I don't know, countless times in the process. I'm the guy who's focused on cost. For the fellow I didn't introduce, Mr. Bill Stone, the business manager in the back of the room who has to finance the project. We've continued to develop the house structure and the educational program, not only in the building, but Mr. Kircher has been modeling this house structure in the existing Crooked Billet, in experimental spaces, if you will, where he's set up the house structure, spoken with his educators, the kids are aware. They know that this educational program change is coming, and he can speak more to how well that's been embraced. Confirming a balanced site for soils so that we're not running trucks through the community and we're not incurring costs by either removing soils or importing soils to the site. Increasing the building setbacks to the extent that we can in the neighborhood. Identifying and really working hard on how we put a stormwater management plan together for the project. Maintaining separate bus and parent access and being cognizant of traffic. Maintaining the district admin center. All things related to the connectivity of not only Keith Valley Middle School, but the entire district run through the fiber that feeds the site. And so that data center gets relocated to the new Keith Valley Middle School in the administration area. And I'm sure you understand that as a result of the pandemic times, the connectivity and the availability of high-speed internet, not only to classrooms, but to students directly, is very, very important and has gotten a lot of heightened attention since the pandemic. So that's an important step in this process. Security, always important, and working with Rick Kerrigan and the folks at the district to make sure that we continue to make safety a priority in the project, whether it has to do with the secure entrance, what we make the glass materials out of, how we handle, how students, parents, visitors make their way through the building, always a very high priority. Also providing separation so that this is a community building, that it will be used by the community for other purposes, sports, for meetings, for celebrations, for using the recreational facilities as well. And I mentioned athletic facilities there. And then, again, reducing the overall footprint the best we can so that we're now down to about 276,000 square feet, being cognizant of where we put paving, where we put lighting, where we put landscaping. My favorite saying is that Hatboro Horsham is very intentional in the way they look at their building projects and look at it really from a lot of different aspects. Just a little bit on the schedule for our land development process. As I mentioned, went through the zoning hearing board process, and the zoning decision was rendered in February. We have a approval letter from the County Planning Commission. We've made not only our initial NPDS submission to the County Conservation District, but also a second one for technical review. We'll be responding to their technical review comments here in April, and we don't see any reason that an NPDS permit would not be in our hands by summertime. We've worked with McCloskey Faber, the Township Landscaping Consultant, on several changes, and we have another slew of changes coming in response to comments that we've received from the neighbors, from the facilities group at the school district, and from other sources. Planning Commission, as I mentioned, was in March, and here we are in front of Township Council for the preliminary approval tonight. Ultimately, over the summer, we're looking at the development agreement, the building permit submission, and ultimately recording. So that's generally our timeline for land development. And during the land development process, another slew of changes have been made to make the project better, and it really starts with stormwater. A fourth underground stormwater basin has been added. All of the stormwater basins on the site are all underground. We do not have any ponds on the site. We've had very good luck with underground basins on the past projects, and we're confident with everything that's on the site that that's the way to go. I mentioned the submission of our NPDS permit and the county planning approval. We've performed our traffic analysis that we can speak to a little bit more this evening. Another round of auger probes, primarily to identify where the rock surface is in the area of the building that's the lowest. We're proposing to close the west side of Olive Avenue. If you're not familiar, there is an access on Olive Avenue to the back of the site. We're closing that to vehicular traffic, but it's remaining open for walkers, pedestrian traffic that comes to the site. We've eliminated staff parking driveway on Upland. We're trying to reduce the amount of traffic and the intersections on Upland. In that case, we didn't want evening events to create headlights that went into residents' homes. We've added curb for the length of Upland. Upland will be widened just a small amount. It'll receive curb, sidewalk, and that new paving for that widening on Upland. We've reduced the length and width of parking spaces in order to reduce the amount of impervious on the project site. We've reduced the tennis courts and parking. To your dismay, we have eliminated a synthetic turf field on the site. I know that was one of the discussions that we had early on. All of that in order to get our impervious as low as possible. Replacing sidewalks on Meeting House Road, adding sidewalks requested as a result of the review letters on the site. Our building signage has been reduced and modified after the zoning hearing. We've reduced exterior building canopies. We've added grassy areas, reduced site fencing. We're adding, changing, modifying trees and landscaping on the perimeter, but across the site. And we've been working recently on changing, widening, and addressing driveway entrances as a result of the traffic analysis. So it's really been a comprehensive process. I include this slide just to identify that we remain on schedule for the completion of the land development process and all of our permitting by early this fall. Our intent is to bid the project as required by public bidding laws late this fall. I'm sure you're aware of the two worst words in construction that exist right now, supply chain issues. So we want to give contractors ample time to begin buyout for this project. If contractors so choose, late this fall or into winter, construction could at least start to trickle in on the site, but we anticipate it would be a 2023 start in full gear. And we're looking at a move over the summer of August of 25 into the new building with the first day of school in the new KV in September of 25, as long as the superintendent pushes the start of school until after Labor Day for us. Then we have the process of abating the existing KV, doing the demolition. We have the data center to move over. Once we have an occupied building, that whole computer service and center needs to be moved over. And then we're demolishing Keith Valley and doing field construction. So this process will take us out into October of 26. And depending on exactly what we use for the fields, it could be sod, it could be seed. We have to determine that when our actual first day of play on fields would be. So that is the overall length of what we're facing with respect to construction. Just a couple of comments here as we get toward taking a look at some of the specifics of the land development submission. With respect to stormwater management, we've said this, I think, from the start. Presently, there's no stormwater management whatsoever on the Keith Valley site. We have a couple of inlets here and there, but there are issues with rainstorms and water specifically on upland. There really is no control. And so this project addresses this by adding the 4 underground basins and then conveying stormwater in accordance not only with the Conservation District, but also the township's more stringent stormwater requirements into the municipal system at the 4 blue locations shown. That's where stormwater enters the municipal system. And so we believe, and I think the township engineer has concurred, that the stormwater management plan that we've submitted is approvable, if you will, with respect to those requirements, but we're always looking to improve. I don't want to go through the stormwater design. I'll let that to Terry as we go through the waivers, but we've done everything that we can in order to reduce the amount of impervious and improve our stormwater collection volume and our system to do the absolute best on the site. And there have been discussions absolutely in the prior meetings about the impervious and the building height. And we've been walking this line between a 3-story building or a 2-story building. The 3-story building is higher and obviously comes with some objection from neighbors, but at the same time, if we went 2-story building, it would be larger and we'd have more impervious possibly on the site. We feel we've come to a very good balance and done really the best that we can with what we've got, also taking into consideration some of the reductions that we've had for program items on the site that we just probably can't put into this project. At this point, we get to kind of the interactive portion of the presentation where we'd like to understand what you would like to discuss tonight. I wanted to touch on a couple of things that are new that will be incorporated in our resubmission so that you see them, and I know we have neighbors with us as well that we've talked about this at planning, and so I wanted to
So just to also clarify, so when Jamie's saying resubmission is the final, so they're here for preliminary review tonight. Council can't give approval tonight because they haven't gone through the waivers. The solicitor has to draw up a resolution once the waivers are agreed or not agreed upon. And then, so the next meeting, which is April 13th, is where you would act on a preliminary approval. But when he says resubmission, so they're at the preliminary stage now, resubmission is final review, final plan.
Great. Thanks for that clarification, Bill. Appreciate it. So traffic analysis discussion, and I'll let Anton speak to this in a moment. There's a couple of things just at a summary level that I wanted to touch on with respect to the traffic. Driveway modifications were something that came back to us in the form of comments from Gilmore, and as a result of our analysis and Anton's analysis. There's also been concern on Meeting House Road with respect to traffic, with respect to turns. And so what we're seeing here, help me out with my LED, that's it. So there's been question primarily about the parent driveway here, and a little less, but still concern and question about the bus driveway here. And what you see here, and probably only Eric would recognize this from everybody, this is the new plan that would be submitted, where we have right turn and left turn lanes for the buses and the pork chop arrangement requested during the review process in order to minimize the impact out on Meeting House Road and allow everybody to get in and out safely at this intersection. The parent entrance has been another subject of discussion with respect to how this works. I just want to refresh council's understanding of how the parent loop works. As parents come in to drop off, they obviously come through this area, down the single lane, and as soon as you get to about this point, this becomes 2 lanes wide, so that as parents come and park and drop off, if one parent stops, parents behind can go around the car, slip by the car, and get out. In the afternoon, the intent is to maximize the length of this queue. And so that's why you see the sidewalk up this side of the queue, is because it'll be Mr. Kircher's job to bring parents who are queuing in the afternoon all the way up to about this point here. Not stopping here, but bring the queue as far as possible, so that students, when they're let out, they walk up the sidewalk in order to get into the car. Out at Meeting House, the concern has been, how do we swiftly allow cars to get in off of Meeting House and get back out? And the concern has really been probably for the morning commute, because that's the fastest and most congested time. And so the change that's been made is that this entrance has been what we affectionately called a bugle entrance. So rather than a decel lane, there is a turning lane directly in. We have on the exit side, we have a right-hand turn and a left-hand turn. There's a left-hand turn from Meeting House into the site. And so as we have this in the completed form, we don't have a reduction in the level of service of that particular intersection. And maybe, Anton, if I could ask you to speak a little bit at this point to the overall traffic study and also to these driveways, since I'm not a traffic engineer.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, and I guess just for, as mentioned, I'm from McMahon Associates, but also I'm resident of Horsham Township. I have 2 kids that have gone through the school district. One's currently at Keith Valley, and then I'm also on the soccer board, and I'm the tournament director. So I've dealt with this site for Colleen Riley for the past 3-4 years, so I'm familiar with that operation too. But as far as, you know, currently out there with the school being close to Meeting House Road, you know, current issues with the bus and vehicle interaction, there's some interchangeability between those operations, you know, with the parent drop-off at the gym there's that short queue to get back to Meeting House Road that might sometimes spill back to Meeting House Road. And now with COVID, there's a lot more parent drop-off, so that's been a little bit exacerbated. And then we were also looking at
Once you're coming out, making that left out after you drop off your kids, that's a little bit, has a delay coming out. So this has been mentioned, the separation of the bus from the parent pickup, that'll help with eliminating that interaction. When we did our studies with the traffic counts in February, which is when there was a lot of parent pickup drop-off, we did field observations that we looked at what those queues were, especially in the PM when people were waiting to pick up their students, then they come really early to wait for their kids to pick them up. And we believe, as Jamie mentioned, having this queue all the way around in the PM, there's sufficient space to accommodate now, which we're probably experiencing one of the highest times. But as far as the traffic in the AM, there is definitely a higher parent pickup, is higher as typical with schools in the AM than in the PM. A lot of times the PM, the students take the bus home. So originally we had, when we came to the Planning Commission, we didn't have the pork chop on this side, and there was a lot of questions about the interaction between the lefts in and the rights in. Will there be enough time for the left turns to get in while the rights are turning in? So that's why you see this change here to separate the two, which will give a little bit of a space for the left turn traffic to turn in as the right turn traffic's turning in. And yet you have to remember, this is also during this time period. This whole stretch here is controlled by the school speed limit, which is reduced speed down to 15 miles an hour. So we're really experiencing, slower speeds as people get into these locations here.
Plain, hard to see what that's doing up there.
Sure. Sorry.
Saying that there's a lane specific coming up Meeting House, like is the road widened at that point, or you're just saying that there's just a turn?
Correct, yeah. It wouldn't be widened
no
for a separate
lane.
turn lane.
I thought you said there was a lane to go in.
Coming from the other direction to make a
I
left
meant
turn in.
coming up. I thought you said there was a lane, just a quick lane to go in, a quick turn in.
No, I
That's really
apologize.
just part of the road.
There's
It's
not a
just-
decel lane that goes in. All that is a bugle entrance so that you're not making that hard right-hand turn.
Right, so nothing widened to allow for any kind of decel in.
Correct.
They don't need it because the left-hand turns aren't blocking them when they come in.
Right, no, I just wanted to clarify what that was.
Right. And with our analysis, it would show to operate acceptably under that condition. And we're really looking at, when we did our traffic counts, we're really talking about a 20-minute, 30-minute time period where we really saw like 7:30, you'd start picking up the traffic, and then once you hit 8 o'clock, it drops off drastically as far as the parent pickup drop-off.
And you think you can pick everybody up in that queue so that they're not out on the road?
In the PM, in the after-school, yes, yeah. We measure about a 14, like today with the extended COVID, where people, today, they wrap around, and we measured like a 1,400-foot queue, and that's what's here. And we did observe in the field, there was a lot of spaces in between the cars,
If I could
Right.
borrow that, I
Yep,
can
absolutely.
share the difference with the existing. This is a diagram that identifies the existing circulation on the site. Take a moment to just get oriented. This is Meeting House Road. And so in the morning, presently, our arrival is right here where parents come up, they drop in front of the school, they progress past, go through the bus entrance, come back out to Meeting House where they're requested to make a right turn or a left turn. That's the morning. So I hope that you can see that in the morning, our loop is significantly longer for parents in the AM. Okay?
Just a question.
Yes.
Intimately familiar with this. I'm usually there at around 7:15, and it gets backed up all the way to 6:11 sometimes. And that backup, I think, actually helps with the egress of traffic out of the school. With the increased efficiency of the ingress to the school, will it be more difficult for people to get out, for parents to get out, and buses to get out?
Yeah, and as far as the buses.
I mean, 15 miles an hour is enough to cause a totaled vehicle,
Yeah.
so. And it's going to be a lot more, because it gets backed up to the point where vehicles stop, and that actually allows the vehicles to egress out of the school district property. So I'm wondering, with that efficiency, I mean, 15 miles is pretty fast. Is that going to be safe enough for vehicles to get out now that we have a more steady flow on Meeting House? I think the improvements look great. I'm just worried about that egress and the left turns into the school.
Right, yeah, so today, I guess, first the buses, today, the buses enter below where the blue is there, and they do have, they look for gaps in those vehicles, as you mentioned, as they come up. So that's going to be separated outside of where the interaction with the parent drop-off, so that should be improved for the buses as far as that entrance and exit, so that concern's minimized. As far as the parent pickup drop-off, I was out there, I do observe that back up to 611. I think one thing that kind of helps with, like you're saying, the exit is also the light at 611 kind of meters that traffic coming across 611 across Meeting House, because you get like a surge of traffic, it backs up, and then people clear out to come through. So I do see that there's some that came through the analysis that we discussed with Gilmore, is specifically that left turn out of the parent drop-off, may require some, today people give courtesy gaps to let people out, but I imagine, like, I personally, when I'm leaving the school, if I see that left turn it's backed up, I'll make the right turn out, which is much simpler. So if that queue gets too much, I anticipate a lot of people will make that right turn out.
So you think that the queue will provide sufficient room for parents who have dropped off their kids to wait, and the light at 611 and Meeting House and the light at Meeting House and Moreland will provide adequate spacing or metering to allow for
For making the lefts out?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're going to have to observe. I mean, one part of what the school district's required to do is do a post-study after it gets into something we can observe how that actually operates in the field.
Yeah, it looks like a great plan. Like I said, I'm just worried about it being too efficient and then causing a new problem on that traffic pattern. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great comment, and that's what came out of the zoning discussion, that if there was some form of congestion, there was some question as to how it was operating, that the district at its cost would re-study and look for a way to resolve that issue should it pose itself. I apologize, a little confusion here. This is AM circulation, typo on my part. This is the PM circulation pattern where right now, presently, cars, and this is really the COVID or the pandemic response, cars used to come in and loop and come back out. Now they come in, they loop around the lower parking lot, they loop back up around the upper parking lot, and then leave. Our bus traffic comes in the main entrance, and then there's also a looping process here for dismissal. So the clean separation of the two, and still we have a longer queuing pattern, is what we think is going to be a benefit to the overall traffic pattern. Make no mistake, obviously, during that AM and PM 15 and 20 minutes, there will be congestion on Meeting House, but we think that it certainly will not be worse than it is now, and it'll be more orderly to boot. Other questions with respect to traffic while I was on this slide? Just wanted to open it up to you to other things that you're observing or seeing. We've, just to provide you with some other input, for some reason everyone's picked up on my term of cheaters, and we're always concerned about where parents will be going to figure out how to drop their kids off or pick them up at the end of the day. We're all familiar with where they go now, and they park in the admin lot or they park back on Olive. There's no way in order to eliminate that completely, but one of the areas of concern for everyone was what's going to happen along Upland Avenue. Our moms and dads are going to race down there in the morning or the afternoon. In the morning, all right, Junior, get out and jump across the street. We want to prohibit that. We start with signing that there's no stopping or standing or parking on Upland whatsoever. So that's the first pass. It's something that the school district has to train their parents to adhere to, And we may ask the township for some assistance as far as being out there and watching what vehicles do. There's a training process absolutely involved in order to make sure parents start to adhere to what the plan is.
If you're going to request no parking on Upland Avenue on your side, that is only done by ordinance of council. So council has to pass an ordinance and post it. So that's separate from your land development. So an ordinance would have to be passed by council and approved by council, and then Public Works would post it and the police could enforce it.
Okay. And we're more than happy to do that, just so everybody's clear. There is no room to park on Upland, even with the improvements. So anybody who would park there would be in a live lane as well, so.
There'll be a new curb. There's not a gravel shoulder. It'll be a new curb and sidewalk. So that's what we're trying to do to prevent that to the extent
They
that
have
we
a
can.
sidewalk that runs from Upland to
The full-
parking area,
So
loop rather?
there's a sidewalk right here.
What's that for?
Access for walkers to the building.
Eliminate that, you might eliminate the drop-off. I
Understood.
guess that would stop it.
There's
Understood.
also another sidewalk just below what you see on this drawing at the
Oh, is there?
bottom of the staff parking lot.
At Olive, there's
At
another
Olive.
sidewalk there.
I guess they're like, like water, they'll find a way in.
True.
Okay. So that's traffic analysis and discussion. We do have
Jamie,
our,
before you move on from traffic, there was a discussion at the planning commission about you've got the staff parking lot and there's a gate and when you're opening and shutting it, and there was a concern about whenever it opens, happens to be the same time sports are starting, and I thought you guys were going to potentially go back and look at kind of the operational aspect of that.
right. Thank you, Eric. That's a good point. So between the parent loop and the staff parking lot, we've provided a driveway entrance with a gate. Okay? So in the morning, right now, with the parking lot and the parent loop, staff would arrive at this loop by Upland. That's the plan. They would arrive by Upland. Okay? Morning drop-off occurs. This gate is closed. The goal, trying to prevent my cheater parents, if you will, from either leaving the drop-off loop or for a parent to run through the staff parking lot and running back out here or shortcutting out to Meeting House. The other discussion that we've had is making sure that there's a staff member here in the morning so that this driveway is closed to parent traffic when staff are already parked there. That's the morning. In the afternoon, when staff leaves after students leave, this gate would be opened so that staff could leave the site either by Upland or by way of the parent loop, providing them a second means out. I mentioned earlier that we deleted a driveway from the staff lot here, mainly because of what occurred at evening events. This is the natural intersection with Olive on the east side of the site, and so I don't have the headlight issue here. That's really why we eliminated this driveway, and then put the drive here so that the option would be for a staff member to leave and make their way out to Meeting House this way, giving them the secondary option. Okay?
How about the gates on the access road?
Gates.
On the fire access road.
Absolutely, worth discussing. One of the other changes with respect to our site layout is the road behind the school from this point to this point is an emergency access road only for fire and police. There's a gate at this location and at this location. It's been the subject of a lot of discussion, but there used to be a little curve in this road. We've gone back, we've shared this with the fire marshal, and we've straightened that road. The desire to make the access road as close to the building as we could, so long as he could approve it and keep the road away from the Milton property line. So this is one change that we've made, that this access road is now straight. While I'm on the subject, we have LED cutoff lights across the entire site. The photovoltaic study for that is included with our submission. But one thing that we would request relief from is from putting any 20-foot sight lights on that access road and leave it dark, so that it's dark at night, as requested by our neighbors. Okay, so we've straightened this road. There are gates at either end. It's only for emergency access, and we'd like to leave it dark at night, absent of street lights. And I do. That's our request, right, guys? Okay.
Is there any lighting in the back of the building at night at all?
It's funny you should ask. So in working on the driveway out back and our site lighting, that starts to pull in the landscape consultant review and all of the work that we've done. As you know, a school district wants to have very low maintenance, and they don't want leaves, and they don't want to have to be doing landscaping all of the time. But at the same time, we want to have proper buffering. We want to do the right thing in accordance with the township ordinances, and really in the back of the building where our site setback is still 3 times the required width, we want to do everything we can in order to make it as unobtrusive as we possibly can. So I mentioned the emergency access road alignment and the lighting. We've taken care of that. We're also working continuously to update the landscaping modifications, particularly on that Milton Avenue property. And I'm going to share them in 2D, and then we're going to share a little bit of video simulation that's going to speak to both the landscaping and the lighting, to give you and some of our neighbors an updated simulation of where we are. So in the original submission, this is the Milton Avenue property line, and you'll recognize the emergency access road with our slight curve in it, and the landscaping arrangement that's along Milton Avenue. And the request was to straighten the line, keep it as, straighten the road, keep it as close to the building as possible, and maximize the landscaping to the extent possible. And then also, in the evening when the school is quiet, keep that facade also as dark as possible. And so what we've done is straighten the access road. We do have utilities that are shown here as well that run under and adjacent to the access road out to our stormwater basin. There's some other utilities here that are under that road. And then what we've also done is increase the landscaping buffer to the point that a new waiver would be requested when we go back to planning. Because, you want to do that, Terry? Okay.
So if you look at the original submission, which is what's officially before you right now, and what we're going to submit to you in the near future, it's pretty clear that we have a lot more plants. You can see a lot more evergreens, those dark circles are the evergreens there. So we increased it from a single row and put a double row in, especially where we could, especially behind the houses there. As you go to the right of the plan, there are some slope and space constraints that limit that, but you're also getting beyond the influence of the building as well on that side. So, and I like this plan very much. I hope you do too. But this plan, as dense as it looks, does not meet all the technical requirements of your landscape ordinance. They require a certain mix of trees and, more deciduous, that kind of thing. So, and we haven't quantified this yet, exactly what relief we need. But in general, we will be asking for relief, and not necessarily tonight, we can do that at the final, but relief to allow the concept that we show under the new submission, including the elimination of the lighting behind the building, to be eventually approved by the township. So we appreciate your feedback if you like the concept of where we're going here.
But can we go back there? Just a quick question. Yeah, I like what you did there too, to try to accommodate the neighborhood. But are there any safety concerns with those patio areas and the street areas dark at night?
So that another good segue. I'm going to share with you some video of the building going dark and what would it look like. And we've talked about this as well. So by introduction, at the stair towers on each house at that exit from the building, there's a three-story tall stair tower. At that exit from the building, I need to have egress lighting. And so there'll be a dim LED light that shines directly down at the exit. And so you'll have that lighting at night. And then inside the courtyard, there will also be LED wall packs at a low level that shine down. And we've worked with the school district security officer who is going to want exterior cameras in those courtyards so that we can pick up movement at the doors. And so understanding what cameras they use and where the lights are placed on the exterior of the building, we feel confident that we've got the security issue that you mentioned covered. At the same time, we don't want cameras looking across the property line. And so placement on the building, height, we're looking inside the courtyards and also capturing what happens at doorways, not necessarily picking up what happens here or over at my friend Mr. Custer's house across on Milton. So we've talked about this at length.
And additionally, those gates will be normally locked. You know, that's for emergency access and potentially maintenance use, but they'll be locked, so there won't be any vehicular traffic back there.
My thoughts are kids at night or whatever at night.
Yeah, and that's like the security cameras that Jamie mentioned.
There's two berms, actually.
One is evening, it turns into evening, this does it in the daytime.
Okay, just a couple of simulations that we've been working on. Our simulations have not caught up with our plan yet, but this gives you an idea of where we're headed. And I know I'm gonna hit that here. Do I press? Do I press go? Yeah. So from a frame of reference, you're at the end of the building, at the very end on the Milton Avenue, and this video is going to turn the corner and it's going to look at the Milton Avenue property line. And you're going to see two lines of evergreens. And then the other buffering screening component that we're proposing to add is a small berm along the entirety of that property line where the grade of our building sinks into the ground so that the evergreens that are planted are raised. And the other thing is that we're taking the landscaping and pushing it right to the edge of the Milton property line so that a homeowner on Milton comes out of his backyard and at the end of his property line there is a screen, a buffer, the beginnings of the berm, so that there isn't some appreciable distance that the district is, for instance, mowing in summertime. We want the end of the property line to be the end and have a screen start right there that's deep enough that it satisfies the neighbors. Let's see if this video does it. So you're turning around the end of the building. You're looking down the access road, which is now straight. You can see the berm that the evergreens are on. In this image, they're on the inside of the berm, but we propose to move them out toward the edge of the property line. And if I go back, if I do that again, once again, these evergreens would be pushed to the Milton property line, or proposed to be pushed to over the side of the berm. And what's kind of interesting here is that that green space that you see there between the trees that would be a homeowners on Milton, there are many trees right on the property line. So that green space doesn't really exist in all areas. There's also some fencing, there are some sheds, so that open green space, it's a backyard of a neighbor, but there is not an appreciable distance that is school district property. So in the evening, and I'm going to do the same thing, guide you through this, because there's the way the video is made, it goes from day based on the hours going by, and then it goes completely pitch black dark. I want to tell you that we will not have completely pitch black dark because we'll have building lights that come on the outside. But then you'll see that those night lights come on in this video. So it's the same image, running around the back of the building, seeing the berm, the straightened emergency access. There are the airplanes or the stars going by. It's getting darker. It will never be this dark. Oh, Because that was the-
That's what you'll see, because of the wall pack cutoffs.
Okay.
So, yep.
Let me keep going here.
Yeah, you'll see more.
There's how the wall packs come on in the evening. So to point this out here, this is the stair tower at the end of the house that will have emergency lights on, dimly lit on the inside in response to the code. Wall packs that look directly down. There'll also actually be a wall pack, you can probably see it right here, just slightly, that looks down. But from there out, that emergency access road, it would be dark without street lights on it. Is this a new one, David?
Yeah, so these are, first we start with how the building looks on a typical evening. The question was asked of us in planning, what happens on a back-to-school night? And so what we're going to show you is a typical night and then back-to-school night, because the building is lit up. Realize the lighting in the building mostly is going to be the front of the building, because that's where the community spaces are, but there will be a couple times a year when you'll see the second one after this,
Second one after this.
or the first one after this, yeah. So there's your typical evening.
So what happens here, again, the wall packs come on, you have lights at the doors, this is enough for security cameras to pick up. Typical evening, building goes dark. But the other thing that's happening is that custodians are in the building, especially in wintertime after dark. So as soon as they go into a classroom, that light would be on after dark, but not in the middle of the night. The lighting controls in the system are based on vacancy sensors. So when there's no movement in the classroom, the lights go out in the classroom. So there's not an occasion where, oh, the custodian left the light switch on. That should not occur. So here's a school event evening. Thank you, David. And what we should see here, the building goes dark, but there's activity in classrooms. And so those classrooms on Meet the Teacher Night until that event ends in the evening would be lit up in that fashion. And so the response of the district as far as the design here was, while these classrooms would be illuminated in the evening, they are looking inward to the courtyard, and at the end of the house, there are no windows on the facade that look into the classrooms. So you would not have direct light from those classrooms looking out at the property line. I think I'm going to leave it there and not necessarily do all of them that we have, but again, find out if there's questions that you have or comments that you have on what we've been trying to put together.
You still have your list of waivers that we have to go through?
I do.
That's what we, which, if all goes well, that's where the solicitor can draw up the resolution from. So just let me ask you, in the meeting packet, we have the February 4th, 2022 waiver request letter. Does this match what's on the screen?
With the exception of the one.
I believe it does for the most part, yes.
They're in a different order, though, Bill.
They are.
Different. So how did, well, I don't,
Would it be easier to follow Eric? Would it be easier to follow Eric's letter?
No.
Our letter breaks it out and it's exclusively waivers. It does follow the same order as Eric's letter, but it leaves out the
The
non-waiver
letters
items.
follow each other. The letters do not follow what's on the screen here.
That's correct.
Either we should look at the screen or Bill should pull up the waiver request letter on the screen.
I think the waiver request letter breaks it down the easiest.
can't.
Dennis might need to pull up the waiver request letter on the screen.
You don't necessarily need a.
You don't do that any other meeting. Why don't we just go
Yeah.
through the waiver request letter? Everybody has it in front of them.
Yeah, so let's just start with your February 4th. Everyone has that in their meeting packets from, it's Terraform Engineering, February 4th, 2022.
Why don't you guys go to like the overall site plan, just so as waivers get pulled up, you can point to things.
Oh, what was on the screen was from Gilmore's letter, I
Mark-
believe.
Let me just make sure they all have it.
Red button, right? All right, just let me know when you're ready to roll.
All right, let's roll.
Okay. So you'll see some of these waivers are noted as new. We had made an initial waiver request, and some other comments came through, so that is what new means in this case. So Stormwater Management Ordinance, Section 190-18K, requires basins to dewater both rate and volume over a period of not less than 24 hours, but not more than 72 hours. We got some pretty favorable infiltration rates, and that's why we have some of the basins dewatering less than 24 hours. So we're requesting a waiver to allow the basins to dewater in less than 24 hours.
We're okay with this. It's, the water's infiltrating in the ground. It's not like they're discharging it too quickly off-site, so we're good.
Now, item B, Stormwater Management Ordinance 190-23. We're requesting, the ordinance requires that we control 100% of disturbed impervious, and it should be modeled as a meadow condition. Now, we have an existing developed site here that is very difficult to do. And I discussed this with Mr. Garden. I believe Gilmore is in general agreement with this waiver, but we haven't finalized and quantified exactly what it's going to be yet.
So we're going to defer this to final.
We're going to defer that one to final. But currently, it's, I think it's around 62% or something instead of the 100% in that area. So we're going to defer that to final, okay? Item C, Saldo 19811, 19818, 19820, requires separate preliminary and final plan. Well, we can just cross that one off the list because we are going through both. So C is crossed off the list. Item D has to do with plan scales. Ordinance requires 1 in 50 or 1 in 100. We're presenting it 1 in 60 and 1 in 30, actually larger than the ordinance.
We're good with this one. We're also good with E, which is the 400 feet existing features, so we can skip to F.
Okay, thanks.
If you can't tell, I'm pushing you along here.
No, you can, hey, I'll move even faster if you want me to. Section 19829A4 requires 10-foot wide crosswalks. We're requesting a waiver for 6-foot wide crosswalks. Any questions?
We're okay with that.
Okay. On to this page 2, item G, Saldo 19831C3 requires paving cartway of 40 feet. Meeting house, at its narrowest point, it varies a little bit, is 38.9 feet. We're requesting a waiver to allow the width of Meeting House Road to remain as it currently is, which would be a waiver of 1.1 feet in the worst case.
And we're okay with that. As they've shown tonight, they're doing quite a bit of improvements at the proposed intersections to make it happen. So 1.1 feet's not a concern of ours at this point.
Item H, section 19833B3 requires non-residential driveways to have a maximum grade of 5%. The driveway going down to the loading area, say from about here down, is at about 6.5%, which is really not that bad a slope for a driveway.
And we're fine with that. No one's parking on that, where doors get.
Natural grade going down there anyway.
Correct. Item I, section 19833B3, requires a one-way aisle to be 18 feet in width. We're requesting a waiver to allow a 15-foot aisle, and that would apply in front of the buses here. It's really not, in my opinion in any case, not a one-way driveway, but the buses will pull up here and queue in the striping as you see, and they will pull out banana peel style. The first bus goes out, the next bus goes out. And 10 feet is actually more than enough for a bus to turn out there. We gave them 15 so they have a little extra room. So that's been interpreted as a one-way aisle. So we request relief if that's required. Okay? Questions? None? Okay. J, 19833B4, the driveway widths are not allowed to exceed 35 feet in width. We talked about this in great detail. we have, the slip lane coming into the driveway, the right-hand turn, the pork chops, obviously makes it wider than 35 feet. And of course, the islands are placed in there to keep the traffic separate and narrows the openings, but it will have to be wider than 35 for that configuration. That would also apply at the bus driveway as well.
Everybody good with that?
K, Section 198-33B7, requires that a single property have no more than 2 driveway entrances. We have 2 driveway entrances on Meeting House Road and 1 on Upland. In the current condition, and that's in the proposed, there are 3 driveways on Meeting House and 1 on Upland. So we actually have 1 less driveway in the current, plus the access to Olive, so 2 less driveways than in the current configuration. Any questions on that one?
I think we'll be okay with that.
Okay. And this one is not on the list, but I'm putting it in, 198-33D8, parking stall size. There's a little bit of conflict between what zoning says and what the saldo says about the ordinance. We are going with, or the ordinance requires 10 by 20-foot spaces, but they can be relieved by this board. So we're proposing 9-foot wide by 18-foot spaces where they can overlap. Anywhere it's against a curb or a sidewalk, excuse me, those will be 20 feet deep. So the last row closest to the building, I'm pointing with my pencil, but that's probably not working for you. This row here would be 20 feet deep. And this row here would be 20 feet deep because we have sidewalk next to it, okay? Any issues on that one?
I think we're okay.
Okay. And we did that in an effort to reduce impervious surface, so that was kind of a response to requests from the township. L, I've discussed that with your township engineer and decided to retract their request for that relief, so. M, section 198-33D15 requires ends of parking rows to have a 10-foot wide landscape island. So that would be here and here, these little islands you see, and it's a striped island, okay? It's not a landscaped island, okay? So the reason we're putting striping in is to make it easier to plow. You don't have to work around all those islands. And now to make up for that surface, we have 20-foot grass islands down the middle here. Your ordinance would require a minimum of 8. So we're actually showing much more grass surface within the parking lot than the ordinance would require. That applies at the staff parking lot, also at the visitor parent parking lot as well, okay?
Everybody good with that?
All right. Item N, 198-34A3, requires a minimum of 5 feet from the face of curb to the edge of sidewalk. A waiver is requested to allow a distance of 4 feet from the face of curb to the face of sidewalk. So we have currently on Meeting House Road, we have 4 feet between the curb and the sidewalk. So we're maintaining what's existing. The sidewalk there, for your information, is currently 4 feet wide. We're making it 5. So that sidewalk widening, if you would, is coming in towards the site. That also applies along Upland Avenue. We're going to have curb, 4 foot of grass, and then 5 foot of sidewalk. That also keeps the sidewalk within the public right-of-way. Okay, to push it out would affect some more the few trees that we can save along Meeting House. Does anybody have any questions or issues about that one?
Good.
Okay, thank you. Going on to page 3, O, section 198-34B. Your ordinance requires 8-inch curb. We are going to place 8-inch curb on the public roadways, but are requesting relief to allow 6-inch curb on the site. Okay, thank you. P, section 198-35G requires slopes to be a minimum of 5 foot from the property line or right-of-way lines. We are requesting a waiver to allow grading as depicted on the plan. There will be areas where it's closer to 5 feet to the property line.
Sometimes, Eric, with that waiver request, we ask for a letter from the adjacent property owner agreeing to the grading within 5 feet. Because contractors aren't perfect.
Really? Okay. Well, and one of the reasons we're doing this, we're trying to get especially at the back of the building, we're trying to get as close to the property line as we can so we can get that berm as high as we can. But that's, I think we can comply with that condition. Okay. Q, 19839C1 requires a separate tree survey plan. We're requesting a waiver to allow the existing conditions plan to act as the tree survey plan. Shows the same information. Questions? Okay. R, and this is one we might have to defer, but I'll discuss it briefly. It has to do with landscaping and the number of plantings that are required. And as I mentioned earlier, the to be proposed landscaping at the back of the building changes the counts from what we had originally requested and does not necessarily meet all the requirements, the numerical requirements for diversity of species along that buffer line. So we will be asking for a request on this, but we want to work out the final details on that, discuss it with McCluskey Faber, your landscape architect, and then present that one for request at final.
So you're deferring?
Yeah, let's defer that one until we hear from Ms. Kluski.
Correct. But as I understand from the board, you're generally in favor of the concept of what we're doing back there, right? With the increased evergreen trees, so.
And as you look at that more too,
Yeah.
go back to the County Planning Commission review letter, because they had some ideas and suggestions of where to plant additional. I don't know if that matches their letter, but that was one part of their letter where they had ideas. Or
Yes.
like that they thought you could get more trees or shrubs into this site. So just go back to the County Planning Commission letter when you're looking at the landscaping again.
We will take a look at that letter. Thank you. S, section 19839E4B. Requires street trees to be planted where street trees do not exist. We're requesting a waiver, Milton Street, right down here, that's actually there's a paper street. No road there, just a paper street. So we're requesting a waiver not to put street trees where a street doesn't physically exist. T, section 19839E4D, allows existing suitable trees within 20 feet of an existing curb to count as a street tree. We do have a couple of trees, and they're not accurately depicted on this rendering, but there are a couple of existing trees that we're able to save, and they're more than 20 feet from the road, and we'd like to count them as street trees.
Sounds like landscape architect was okay with that.
Yeah, yep, okay. And on, let's see, we're on U now, right? 19839E6B, 16-foot wide raised planting island every 15 parking spaces. And this kind of relates to the end island. We do not have raised parking islands in the middle of the staff parking lot. This is 15 spaces, so we don't need them there. Actually, no, we don't have them here either, or the one would be required there. The landscape architect deferred to the township to make that decision. And again, the reason the district is requesting that relief is to make it easier to plow. They got to get school open early and get the kids in there. But we are providing a lot more grass space in those parking lots.
Eric, you have an opinion?
This is normally a McCluskey in favor issue, but I think you want as much parking on the site as you can and make it easy to operate.
When McCluskey in favor objects, they say that specifically, so I think they have 3 categories.
Yeah.
We have no objection, it's up to you, and we oppose.
We didn't get any we oppose things. So that's good.
All right, so you're good.
Yep. Now I'm going to mention the last one briefly, but that has to do with fees, and we'll defer that to the final, okay? That would be W on page 4.
Wait, what about
We
V?
missed
I
V.
missed V.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip one? I'm sorry. Where was I? Oh, the last one, V, yeah. It's very similar to the previous one, requires the end of the parking lot to have a raised planter island.
We already talked about it.
We already talked about that, correct.
I know you're deferring the fees to final.
Yep.
And I get that the fee that you're asking for the waiver for is larger than the other fee. Are you going to be requesting a fee for the stormwater fee also?
If you'll grant it, yeah, sure.
You only asked for one. I'm just saying if you're asking for fee from, or waiver from all the fees, or if you're not.
We can discuss that
This
with...
one is, and just so council's aware,
Yeah.
this is like 78,000, this park and rec
Mhm.
fee. The stormwater fee is like $3,000 or something, so.
Yeah, and the district is providing athletic fields, so I think that seems like a reasonable request. But we can discuss the details of that with staff and then come back with an appropriate request.
Are all of the items in the Gilmore letter will complies?
Will comply to the satisfaction of the township engineer, yes. So we have worked very closely with them on a couple items, a little back and forth, but we will satisfy Gilmore's letters.
Yeah, sure. They're deferring to me to make sure they're okay with it.
That's right.
I got a
Mayor,
thumbs
you
up
got
from
that
Eric,
covered,
that's
right?
good, okay. And now, we didn't specifically request it here, we'll clean that up later, but the lighting on the access driveway, something we asked about, and that's part of keeping the neighbors happy and keeping everybody happy here. But that will be clarified for the final request. All right? I hope that was fast enough.
It's all yours.
That it for your presentation?
Yes, that is it. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and consideration of all the information on a very big project for the district. Thank you.
As long as we're here, I might as well ask for if there's anyone in the public that has a comment or a question, and there is. You need to come up to the microphone and give your name and address for the minutes, please.
My name's Catherine Kenny. I reside at 252 Garden Avenue. Are you still going to are there going to be trees along here? Okay, I want to make sure of that. The other thing I want to bring to everybody's attention is the fact that the middle school currently is used for voting, and for at least 2 voting areas that I know of. So, like, where are people going to be voting at? Where are they going to park at? It's part of my concern. Also, it's used as an evening school. So is it still going to be used as an evening school? And where are those people going to park? Because my concern is Upland Avenue. I keep saying we cannot accommodate this traffic. And it's, you say about those trucks going on 611, well, you got 200 and some odd cars coming into my neighborhood. And if anybody knows that neighborhood, it cannot accommodate those cars. We asked and have never been really given an answer by anybody. We were told that, the zoning board would address some issues that we had. We wanted the school moved forward, because if you move the school forward, the parents would not be able to use that driveway there. But the way it is, people are going to use that road, and our neighborhood is going to change permanently. The other thing that I want to know is, you keep saying about lights. For the parking lot there, how high are those lights going to be? I know they're going to be downward lights, but are they going to be the same height as the ones that you have here at the township building? Or are they going to be the ones that are currently at the school, which are very high? I haven't gotten an answer on either one of those either. Maybe you don't have an answer yet, but, And the other thing...
20 feet high.
Which is, I have no...
20 feet.
Okay, so how high is 20 feet?
Well, 2 times 10.
Okay, sure. Can you give me, is it to the top of they found it in 1777? Or the Horsham building?
Maybe at the high point of the roof here?
Where the pipe runs?
The ceiling roof here, right?
Where the pipe runs?
Yeah, roughly. That's about 20. Everybody agree?
What's the door, 8 feet tall?
Yeah.
7. Yeah. Yeah, that's
It's about 20 feet.
And the other thing that I would like the council to consider is that they're putting a pool there. Now, the high school, the junior high does not have a swim team. It's the high school. So those kids are going to be bussed over. Now, when the middle school was high school and the pool was at Simmons, is that what's up there? Then they were bused to there. That didn't last long. You know, like, people got tired of that. They're going to get tired of the kids being bused over there for swim. So when that happens, what's going to happen to the impervious area? What's going to happen to our neighborhood again? You know, like, because I'm just being a realist. I feel that that's what's going to eventually happen. You know, the kids are going to have this marvelous middle school, and then they're going to go to the high school. So what are we going to do? Build them a new high school, or are we going to start sending the middle school to there? You know, I think we need to project ahead, because, again, I'm concerned about the traffic, I'm concerned about the impervious area, and, you know, I just don't think that the pool should be there, because then it's not going to be a middle school for long. But I am concerned about my traffic.
And you're talking about Upland Avenue, so.
I'm talking about Upland Avenue,
Why don't we
yes.
talk about that? So what, you said there's going to be
You're going to have
200
parents coming.
cars
dropping the-
coming down there?
Right. You're going to have 200,
I don't think
all the
that,
teachers are going to be
I just
coming.
want them to address that. So you
Right.
you said, I'm sure you were just throwing a number out there. You said there'd be like 200 cars coming down
There's
Upland Avenue.
204 parking spaces. So I'm using.
So let them address who's allowed to come down Upland Avenue, and let's start there.
Yeah, I guess one of the part of the things we did is we looked at the traffic on the site, you know, with it intermingled between the bus and the parents and the staff, and then we separated them and we put them in the different driveways. So based on the traffic counts in the AM, we had about 100, 115 staff for the school, another 20, 25 for the admin building that would come down and use the new staff parking lot. And that traffic analysis we completed in the AM, it would operate similar to what it does today. In the PM peak, that we mentioned, the staff leave after the school peak. We studied the school peak primarily for the traffic, with the staff and the admin leaving afterwards, with having open to the parent access. It should, I mean, most of it, hopefully they go through that parent access. As far as Upland itself, we didn't study the PM peak after the school. And it's something we can look at as far as what that impact for that traffic coming out there.
The AM peak of traffic, where staff would be accessing the staff lot from Upland Avenue, is going to be very early in the morning. The way the site is designed with the gates to the visitor parking lot allows the district the flexibility to funnel all or part of the afternoon staff traffic to Meeting House Road. And so we have that flexibility to do so. And it'd be very easy for us to direct staff after students leave to exit on the Meeting House Road side. That's something we can assess as we're seeing, you know, the ecosystem of how the traffic is evolving.
What, I should know this, but what time generally should the teachers be getting in there prior to the students? I mean, are they?
Staff arrives anywhere from 7 a.m. to 7:55 a.m. Most staff is arriving around 7:30.
And students start arriving?
7 a.m., and most buses are there by 7:45 in the morning. The traffic, our parents are resolved by 8:02 in the morning. Our heaviest traffic on Meeting House is 7:40 to 8, like 8:02.
A lot of kids are getting there before the teachers.
No, about the same time.
About the same time.
About the same time, and that's what backs us up now, because as the teacher entrance is where the parents are leaving.
Right.
So that gives us that adds to the backup on Meeting House Road. Here it will be separate.
Oh, hence the idea of bringing the teachers in separately.
Yeah.
And there's approximately how many teachers?
100 teachers.
100 teachers?
And about 56 staff, but then you have the building staff as well, so it's about 180 total.
But the afternoon dismissal is more staggered, with students leaving and then having a short gap and then staff leaving. So after this, the buses would leave, parent pickup would end, staff would still be there, staff would then exit. They'd have the opportunity to be exited, directed towards Meeting House, which would
Right.
ease that burden on Upland.
Your concern is the morning when teachers are coming in, that they're going to drive down Upland Avenue and turn into the parking lot?
Well, yes, they're going to use the road all the access roads, not coming in from more or less Meeting House. They'll maybe come off Moreland and come over Summer to Upland, or comes over Summer to Cedar and then go down Garden or Cottage.
I guess it depends on where they live, right?
Correct.
Well, we can't stop that, right?
Right, but right now, we don't have that, you know, and our roads are really narrow, you
Right.
know? And we also are trying to go out to work at the same time. So I just think that, you know, I really have a concern about the traffic coming in. I really do, you know? Before, it's all going out to Meeting House, which is a major road. Ours are not major roads. Upland Avenue is about the major road in our area.
Right,
You
because
know,
it goes all the way
It's
through.
the one, right, that everybody's going to take to go out to Meeting House for ourselves. You know, I don't go out to 611 by going down Cottage Avenue and out to Horsham Road. I go over Meeting House. And I'm sure a lot of people do from my area. And then again, my other concern is that when the evening school, are they going to be coming into the teacher's parking lot up above? You're not going to let them come in down below, right?
Well, I think that's a question for you guys, huh?
School at Keith Valley, and we're not committed long-term to doing so. We have a good relationship with them, we'd like to accommodate them, but we're not married to that being at this site.
So that's to be determined, I guess. But if that were to happen, would the parking lot, the student drop-off or parking lot, would that accommodate along,
The area where the bus-
without using the teacher parking lot, is what I'm saying, would that accommodate the evening school parking? If you closed off that,
I don't know the evening adult school enrollment, you know, it fluctuates,
Yeah.
but certainly we could prioritize the visitors' parking lot, and the area where the buses pull in is an evening
I
parking
think,
lot.
yeah, I think that's something they'd have to address if it ever came back. But it's not coming back right now.
Currently, right.
Because of the pan epidemic.
Right,
it was
right, right.
canceled, you know, so, I mean, you know.
You
yeah.
close the gate off Upland and just use the other driveway to get there.
Then your other issue was the lighting, which I think they addressed, it's going to be 20 feet.
Right, okay. And it'll be downward.
The pool, I mean, that's another
I
issue
know,
altogether,
I'm just putting it out there, you know, because they got a variance for the impervious surface. You know, if it changed, you're going to have more kids driving to school, you know? And so they're going to come back and look for more area.
yeah, I mean, I
parking.
can't speak for these guys. I
know.
imagine that the
I
need
know,
for,
but I'm just putting that thought.
the
you
need
know?
for a pool is the need for a pool, and the high school doesn't have one, right? So,
Well, no, it doesn't now, but it's on
Yeah.
the same campus right now. And that, you know, so nobody needs to be bused. No parent is going to be, you know, upset that their child is being bused. There's no liability for the kids because they don't have to be bused. You know, now they will have to be bused.
I'm sure when you designed and thought this process through, you thought about the need for another pool, right? Can you address that at all, just to try to appease her objection?
I think, first of all, the Simmons Pool is at the end of its useful life, and it's been discussed in many venues with the school district over the years as to how to make the improvements. And in taking a look at improvements to be made at Simmons, which is only a 6-lane pool, and in order to provide a competitive pool, which would be an 8-lane pool, to upgrade the filtration and chemical system, to upgrade the HVAC system in the existing building, which is also at the end of its life, and to also modify the entire pool shell to accommodate current-day construction. That's the logic and reason behind the construction of a new natatorium. The location of that cannot remain at Simmons because of space concerns and also traffic pattern concerns at Simmons and on Babylon Road. The ability to build a new natatorium at the high school is really constrained by the site properties at the high school and would require complete reconfiguration of the parking areas and the bus drop-off, to say nothing of the locker rooms and gym. And so in the analysis performed by the district, they found that the middle school site would be the most amenable location to a new natatorium, even knowing the fact that athletes would be bused to this location.
I don't know if that answers your question or satisfies your question, but it's an answer.
It's an answer. Yes, you are correct. Thank you.
I have a question about impervious coverage. Is that you, Jamie? One of the main reasons to conserve impervious coverage is to control the amount of runoff from the site. With this completed plan, as it sits today, will there be more or less runoff than the current site?
Go, Terry.
Thank you, Jamie. Considerably less. With the current design, we're discharging 44% less water than your ordinance requires. And significantly less than right now, everything's just running off. So, and your ordinance is pretty restrictive. I mean, it's a tight ordinance, and we're beating that number by about 44%. So there will be a significant reduction in the amount of stormwater running unmitigated off the site.
And there's a couple of interesting points, especially on Upland, with the neighbors that we've met on Upland up near Meeting House. There's an existing inlet at that location that during the highest storms, the Upland floods at that location, and we have a big whirlwind or whirlpool that forms at that inlet. So that issue is corrected as a result of the project. And probably more importantly, some of the flooding that occurs in the homes, not the basement, but in the ground level of some of the homes in that area will also be addressed as a result of what we're doing to control stormwater on the site. So that was one particular group of neighbors that are directly adjoining that are going to benefit from what the stormwater measures are. To say nothing of not overloading the capacity of the pipes that are in that adjacent neighborhood across from Upland and down toward the Pennypack.
Okay, so the amount of runoff for the new facility will be significantly less, and some of the flooding in the area will possibly be addressed.
Correct.
Hey, is there anyone else have a question?
I just have a few questions when the opportunity presents itself.
No, now or never, brother.
So I'm a little late to the show. I just have some security questions. I assume that the Horsham Police Department was well involved with the planning of any security considerations regarding the new middle school?
They have been. They were involved in the community forum that we had when we were looking at what benefits and advantages could come from how we replace the building.
And they were there during the design phase with regard to the interior spaces?
Yes, they have, and we always have a conversation with them about security cameras, location, types of glazing, and areas that are glazed. And so we did that at Hollowell with the police chief, and we're doing the same thing here in conjunction with the security officer from the district.
Okay. And then does Horsham Police Department have access to the video feed in event of emergency?
I believe they do, yes.
At the department? Okay. Can you guys confirm that? And then, this is probably a question for you, Doctor, how do you secure the students in the open spaces in event of a crisis? Because that's a pretty large space for them to cover.
Actually, the design of this building was based, one of the models we saw was the Winchester, Virginia model, which has a similar design. And there are actually great opportunities to, it's a terminology, David, with just like an emergency shut-off of those learning communities, lockdown. It's very easy to lock down those spaces and the doorways if necessary. So there are significant safety measures in place for the design of the building.
What do you mean by lockdown?
Would shut off any exterior access to the entire learning community, which would be those little, the tower areas where the classrooms are situated.
I'm more concerned about that central corridor that runs pretty much the whole span of the building.
So a lot of these buildings are saying less lockdown, more escape. So, and this was one of those learnings from Sandy Hook, as a matter of fact. So each of those has a set of doors into the courtyard and out. So you can progressively lock down portions of the building, and then the kids can escape out of the building rather than locking in place. And that's one of the major moves that people have been doing in buildings these days. The stair towers, what Dr. Eveslage was getting at, was each of the team clusters has a fire door at the head of it on the inside side. So the 120 kids on each floor have the ability to have that area locked down, and they can either sequester in place, or they can escape through the stair tower, so nobody can get into that cluster to get to them. So basically an egress situation.
Okay, what kind of penetration can the windows withstand on those?
So most of the windows, and you're talking about ballistic?
Any sort of penetration?
Yeah,
If he
most of the
takes
windows
a
are not going to
sledgehammer?
have a ballistic treatment. What you will see is all around the entry points, which again is another one of those Sandy Hook findings, is that most of the area there will have an actual plastic covering on the inside. So we'll actually apply a product on the inside for ballistics. So that'll be at the entry points. We will not do that in classrooms around the perimeter in general.
Okay. Great, I appreciate that. And then with regard to the sports fields, are they going to be, this is probably a touchy subject right now, with, are they going to be able to play somewhere else during the construction phase?
We're all set with that. Jared Carr, who's our AD, has already worked. Horsham Township's been wonderful with soccer fields, baseball fields. Currently looking for a football field, but we're working that through.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize if these questions were asked earlier. I just wanted to double check it. I appreciate the presentation.
Anybody else? Gentlemen?
Before you go, I'd like to compliment you on a well-done, high-quality presentation tonight. It is dramatically different than what we saw last year.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I said you took the words right out of my mouth. Just wanted to thank you guys. You did a great job with your presentation tonight. It looks like you're on your way to putting something together that's going to make the community proud and the district proud as well. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you back here.
Wednesday, April 13th, you would do a consideration of the resolution for preliminary approval. You do not need your whole team for that. I'll tell you who, just probably one or two of you. It's usually
thanks.
a 20 or 30-second agenda item.
Right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Being there are no other items on the agenda, meeting's adjourned.